What's up, everybody? Steven coming at you early before the episode. I've never done one of these, so this is going to sound a little different to you, but I promise you I have to do this. And I know when Josh listens to this episode eventually that he's going to be like, oh, here it is. This is what Steven was talking about at the first of the episode. Yep, this is it, guys. I have to say something just for myself about this man you're about to hear on this episode of the podcast. Head instructor and owner of 10th Planet Chicago, Josh Passini. And the reason I'm doing this is because he is one of a handful of people in my life that have legitimately changed the outcome and the direction that I was going in for the better. Now, we've all had those, relationships or friends that have altered your life or lifestyle for a negative that maybe potentially led to a positive outcome, but it's very rare do we meet somebody without an agenda in their life that just truly impact who you are as a human being, like off the bat. And it's one of those things that it's kind of like a gravitational pull and you find yourself coming back to. So you'll hear me talk about, like, there's a story I didn't want to talk about, and I'm going to hint at it again a little bit more. When I met Josh, I was in a different place in my life. I was trying to get back on track. I got derailed a little bit. And when I met this amazing human being, he took me, and I don't know how to say it other than like he set the direction of the sails on this course I was sailing. He set them straight to where I think they needed to go, because it's led me to sitting here talking to you right now, and things in my life couldn't be any better. I mean, people talk about, well, maybe you could win the lottery, this and that. No, I feel like I've hit the lottery right now because I know individuals like Josh. Josh is somebody who, he doesn't have an agenda. He doesn't want specific things for him. What he wants is for you to be the best you. He wants for the people around him to be happy. He wants for the people around them, whether it's they want to be better at jiu-jitsu, to get better at jiu-jitsu, to win tournaments, to do things that they didn't think was physically possible from like a sport aspect. But part of being a gym owner, and we talk about this a little bit in the episode, is not only do you have to do that, you have to be a therapist. I think that's probably one of the hardest things to be in this world. Why would you want to be a therapist? Because you have people like me who come into your gym, and I don't want to be a burden on anybody, but let's be real. We all come with a little bit of baggage, but I don't know if I could have handled my baggage if it wasn't for Josh. Josh taught me how to look at things differently and how to approach life like I do jiu-jitsu. There's always an answer to something. It's an infinity roll, and there's always a counter to a counter. There's always a defense to a submission. There's always something. So he taught me the most important thing in life is don't ever give up. You're not out of this fight until you're out of this fight. And being able to sit down and talk to this person for a couple of hours, I'm going to tell you right now, this is going to seem like a long episode maybe to some of you, but 2 hours is definitely not enough for me. I could talk to this person all day long, every day. I wish he was my co-host on my podcast, because all I want to do is talk life with him. I want to talk jiu-jitsu with him. And we don't get into it much, but like, Josh is one of the most fun people to be around. Like, we're always laughing. We're always joking, but we're also serious. We also get things done on the mats. We also help other people, with their problems and this and that. Like, and then I say we as a group, like, it's not just Josh too. It's everybody in this gym. He's shown me a whole new set of friends. Those people have, jumped in and kind of carried on the tradition that we're all talking about right now. And it's I don't know, it's one of the most beautiful things ever. And I just sound like I'm rambling, but I kind of am, because I'm trying to find and search for the right words to explain of like who this person is and what he means to me. And I just want you guys to know that I would never be sitting here right now trying to be the best person I can be to bring you guys value in your lives, which for you people listening, it brings value into my life to know that, hey, I'm not the only one out there that's searching for entertainment, for maybe a little bit of value to see like, hey, are we all doing things similar? Like, am I off on my thinking? Like, what's going on in this world? Josh is that person who set things straight for me. He's one of a few that I talk to weekly. And I ended up, and I left 10th Planet Chicago for a hot minute, for a few months. And then I ended up getting another back injury. And I set out for a little bit. But I also realized, like, man, I love jiu-jitsu so much, and I don't want to give it up. But I need to do it my way. And I need to do it in the way that was making me the best person I thought I could be. And so when I decided that, hey, stop being a wimpy kid and get back in the gym, I told myself, I was like, I'm going to go back to the place that I learned the most, not only on the mats, but in life. And if it wasn't for Josh, I don't know if I could have ever done that, or maybe I would have. Who knows? It would just perhaps be a longer process. But I owe this guy so much. And I'm so thankful that he agreed to sit down and have a conversation with me, that you guys get to hear and get a little glimpse into the world that him and I and all of his students get to see every day. And I'm so grateful to have Josh, his presence in my life, his mentorship, his coaching ability. And people, knock on instructors that perhaps, aren't a black belt yet. And I'm going to tell you right now, I've rolled with black belts. I've been instructed by black belts. And Josh, if he's not the best, he's damn sure up there in the top. And I think that's a very important lesson, that we need to look at life. Like, it doesn't matter what life tells you what you are, what rank you are, where you are in life. Because if it wasn't for Josh giving me the confidence by him starting his own business and doing what it is that he's doing, I would have never started this podcast. If it wasn't for the people that believe in me and believe in the things that I'm doing, I don't think I would be doing the things that I'm doing. Look at your lives objectively, right? Would you be doing what you're doing right now in your life if somebody didn't lead you there, if somebody didn't encourage you to be there? And I hope everybody that's listening, whatever it is that you're doing in your life, I hope that you're happy doing it. Because if not, I encourage you, like myself. I took a gamble. I moved from small town Oklahoma to come to Chicago to bet on myself and bet on the lifestyle that I want to live. I didn't have a clear picture. It was so muddy. It was so murky. But along those lines, I always told myself, if you just bet on yourself, you're going to find your way. And so when I met someone like Josh along the way, when I met a couple of the other people, and they know who they are if they're listening, that I talk to every week, I have family that I constantly text, and it's the most positive thing ever. I believe you are what you surround yourself with. And if you don't surround yourself with positive things, whether it's physical, mental, whatever it is, you're never going to get to where it is you want to be. And I just want to say, without dragging this on any further, Josh, thank you so much for all that you do, all that you're going to continue to do. And you're the most selfless person that is anywhere under the age of 50 that I know of, that wants the best for everyone that is around you. And I hope that I can speak for everybody that is a student of yours, a friend of yours, family of yours, whatever, somebody that knows you. I just want to say thank you, because deep down, man, I don't know if I could do any of this without you. And I truly, truly appreciate everything you've done. So without taking up any more time, let's get into episode 19 of Head Kick Radio. You guys are going to enjoy this. I appreciate everybody that listens. And please share, like, subscribe, comment on this episode, because this is, man, this episode, it's one of my favorites. I have a few of my highly favorites. Like, honestly, every episode I've done is my favorite, but some of them just, they hit home a little bit more, and this one definitely hit home. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy. What's up, Head Kick Radio listeners? Another week, and I have to tell everybody here as I intro this guy, when I created this podcast, this is the number one guest that I've always wanted to have on. And so here we are this week for the first of hopefully many of these great conversations we're about to have. I am sitting here with one of the handful of people that have truly changed my life. He has introduced a new way of thinking that not only does it apply on the mats in jiu-jitsu, but it applies to all aspects of life. Everybody, head instructor of Chicago 10th Planet, Josh Passini. Josh, what's up, buddy?
Howdy.
Oh, whoa, coming in hot there. That's on me. So here we are on this beautiful, beautiful morning right before practice. How are you today?
I'm good. It's a lovely, cool fall morning, and so caught me off guard with that lovely intro.
I know. Man, hey, you're going to be disappointed because you don't get to hear the actual true intro before this intro, because I'm going to record it tonight. And if I was to say what I'm going to say in this thing, you would reach across and punch me in the face. So I'm going to save that for when I'm not directly in front of you, because that's exactly what would happen. But so you're also going to kill me too, because I've taken notes and I have, some notes and some questions and things that I want to ask you. But first, I want to get to the first hard-hitting question.
Okay.
The fans definitely want to know this, and they're going to check out the picture. Who is the better-looking guy?
I'm going to say you are.
Really?
Yeah.
And
I'm an old man.
You're not that old. You're just a couple years older than me. But that's what the funny thing is for the listeners is I am Josh's doppelganger.
For sure.
And we do look almost identical. It's kind of scary.
Yeah. I have more tattoos than you, though.
That's for now.
For now. So it's a race right now.
Yeah. I'm going to have to ask my dad if he has any kids that he doesn't know about that could be older than me, because I think we look alike here. And you act like my dad a little bit. We were talking about that just a second ago.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny when people see me compared to the rest of my family, they're like, I don't know where that one came from.
That's what I'm saying. You're probably a long lost brother from another mother.
It sounds, it's good. I don't know. I like it. So,
because we have a lot of the same interests, everything from guns to country lifestyle, living. I don't know. I don't want to say like cavemen, but kind of like cavemen. We pride ourselves, I think, on survival and that kind of stuff. Like a lot of people don't focus on that now because the times have changed, technology's changed. It's so much easier to live, but yet here we are still. When we walk around the streets, whether it's in Chicago, out in the country, we want to be the hardest thing to kill.
It's definitely a missing component in life these days. So it's I think more than anything else, it's a component that we have ingrained in our DNA that we don't get to tap into anymore. So I think that leads to a lot of like the frustrations of life and all that fun stuff, because there's like a piece of us that we're not using anymore. So, and I think jiu-jitsu helps with that. Helps us kind of blow out that energy that, otherwise if we were sitting in an office stuck in a cubicle all day, that we wouldn't get. So I think that's part of the reason why jiu-jitsu is so popular right now. But I think that's also part of the reason why, people still go hunting and people, go hiking and mountain biking and, exploring and whatnot.
Yeah. So a lot of people listen to Joe Rogan and they see Eddie Bravo on the podcast. Well, Eddie always talks about most of his guys out in California are computer guys that are the sweetest guys, and but they come in to play it like they play a video game. But then do you see a lot of that, or do you see a lot of like mixture of like people like myself, like you, versus those, or I say not versus, but with those computer people come into your gym and can you explain how that like meshing of different personalities and lifestyles all come together?
We've got an interesting mix. We call it the land of misfit toys because we kind of get a bunch of everybody. We got like dudes that are Bitcoin programmers, and we have guys that are, normal warehouse workers and, servers and chefs and, mechanics. So we got an interesting crew. I think that's a Midwest thing too. I think, we were kind of like that melting pot of all the cultures kind of coming together. And I think in not that they don't have that in California, but I think you're going to see a lot of tech people in Cali, and you're going to see a lot of surfers, and you're going to see a lot of people like that. So you get a captive viewpoint on, you know, what's coming in, that we've got a little bit more diverse, you know, I guess pool to fish from out here in the Midwest.
It makes me kind of chuckle to think about the different types of people that I've seen at least roll through this gym for sure. Cause I'm like, man, I don't know if we would ever strike up a conversation and be friends outside of here, but because we share that one thing, that love for, you know, trying to get better on the mats and choking each other out and all that we do get to, you know, create a bond with people that we're, you know, that aren't like us.
Definitely.
And I mean, but you get to see it in a totally different aspect. It's kind of like, I guess, the same thing of being like a professor at a college or, you know, something along those lines, because those people get to see all different personalities and then they have to try to teach them the same thing. How does that affect like your teaching style?
It doesn't.
You just do your thing.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you know, as much as I try to, I shouldn't even say it, I try to change anything up, because I don't. I at this point in my life, I can only be me and have my teaching style, and it works well with me. And I've definitely, you know, changed, you know, or you know, modified it or refined it throughout the years, but I can't be anything else but me. So then that's the best me that I'm going to give everybody. So that's what I give them.
Oh man. It's a good you too. I can be a witness to that. So explain that then as an instructor at a 10th Planet school, because now I think there's over 80 of them worldwide, and everybody has those different personalities, and you guys are always in communication with each other, I assume, and things like that. Is the difference between like head instructors, like does it feel kind of weird? You're like, man, I don't, you know, this person's totally not like me, but yet we have the same love, the same passion for jiu-jitsu, that this is just meshing really well, and it just feels like a huge tribe worldwide.
Every 10th Planet instructor kind of has their own twist or their own flavor. We all, you know, learn the curriculum, let's call it a curriculum, from Eddie, although it's not set in stone. There are the things that Eddie says, listen, this is what I want you guys to focus on. This is what you have to have proficiency in. And once that happens, once we're able to hit that and prove prove that we can accomplish what Eddie's looking for, then he allows us carte blanche to teach whatever we want. So I could teach judo. I can infuse whatever I want into my version of 10th Planet, as long as I'm able to hit those core pieces that are important to Eddie. And after that, then, like I said, we have free reign. So that's why you see such a diverse skill set through all the instructors, you know, because some guys came from traditional schools, other guys came from, you know, other guys have only been with Eddie, so they teach just like Eddie and they teach his flows and all that stuff. And then there's guys like me that came from wrestling, so it's a even weirder. Weird is maybe not an endearing term, but it's definitely it's not your normal 10th Planet because of the heavy influence of wrestling that I can't turn off.
Yeah, the Passini Grappling.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about that really quickly. Then we're going to backtrack
Sure.
to your whole journey here. But let's talk about Passini Grappling, because a lot of that made sense to me when you're talking about Midwest being the melting pot for kind of what you have going on here and your instructing style and things like that. I think I felt like that kind of hit an identity home when you first put that up. I don't know, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, something like that.
Something like that.
And I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense to me. It's because we are a 10th Planet school. Like you just said, we do a lot of the 10th Planet stuff, but then we have that thing that's just a little bit different. And that to me is the Passini Grappling. Like it is heavier wrestling. It's more wrestling concepts, at least in when you're verbalizing it to us. And explain that a little bit. Explain what clicked and you're like, oh, this is what this is.
Well, Jake, Jake from Fight Chicks, who is on the podcast, he's a marketing, advertising, guru, and he basically said at some point we're gonna have to brand Josh, and I was like, no, and it wasn't for me. It's a weird thing still to have on the wall, to have and t-shirts and stuff with my last name on it. It's very strange for me.
Because you're like the most selfless person that I've been around probably in Chicago that is anywhere remotely a younger person that's not over the age of 60. So that I was kind of wondering when I saw your name, I was like, ooh, like that's not like Josh. Like somebody talked Josh into that. Now it makes sense. It is Jake.
Yeah.
And I study Jake a lot. Him and Elizabeth, I study like how they run their business model. I've talked to Jake. I've asked him questions. I told him I have 1,000, more questions for him. But I can only imagine of how uncomfortable you got at first. But is it starting to sink in? You're like, hey, I'm okay with this? Because that was me with this podcast. Like, it took a while because putting my name in the descriptions and putting my name on anything of this podcast, like, it took a while for it to feel like, oh, this is me. Are you to the point yet that you're like, okay, Passini Grappling is me?
Yeah, it's one of those things that's definitely grown on me. It wasn't all Jake, but it was definitely, we sat down and had many talks about it, and there's other guys in the system as well that kind of brand themselves, and it's it's very in the everybody's talking about personal brand and all that fun stuff out in the ether right now, which I'm less concerned about that, but there are gonna be people out there that don't want to train 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, but they may come in and go, oh, what's this? Maybe they come to me for wrestling. They're like, oh, I compete in jiu-jitsu, but I don't have any wrestling classes at my school, so I'm going to go and see Josh and we'll get into some wrestling for jiu-jitsu. And then they see, okay, wait, maybe all this stuff that, maybe some of the bad press out there in the world, in the jiu-jitsu world for 10th Planet. And then, they'll see that and they say, okay, well, maybe I'm okay with coming to Passini Grappling less than I am, the stigma about 10th Planet isn't there. So, it's one of those things. But it's definitely my brand of 10th Planet is different. So, and it's a cool thing as well. My dad retired, a lot of my grappling came from my dad. So it's kind of like a cool thing for him as well, is that if he wants to come in and teach wrestling, he doesn't have to go, well, I don't know anything about 10th Planet, but, he's got the namesake. So, he could come on in and kind of take that ownership as well. So it's a homage as well. So there's layers to it, bunch of layers.
Well, I think that's what makes a brand, one, successful, and a brand more authentic. And if it's not authentic, it's not believable, then it's never going to work. And so since there is the lineage, did your father, was he your first wrestling coach, or did you start with somebody else?
No, technically, I even though I didn't officially compete my whole life, I wrestled my whole life. Like everything. My dad wrestled in college and he wrestled, and wrestling was super crucial in our life. And that was our play too. Like when I was little, when I look back, everything was geared towards going or putting me down the path to wrestle. So he would teach us stuff when we were just roughhousing, and I didn't know that I was learning wrestling. We were just playing. But yeah, he was teaching me wrestling before I even knew, and that started as a little kid.
Yeah. See, and my growing up is the same way. Like my family had family members that wrestled. I'm gonna shout out my cousin Joe. He was a state finalist his senior year.
That's amazing.
Just a bad dude. Well, anyway, being a lot bigger than him, he, of course, him having all that experience, growing up as kids, he'd always try to wrestle me. He was teaching me all this stuff, and we didn't even know it. And it took me probably 8 months starting jiu-jitsu to realize, like, oh, everything before actual jiu-jitsu is essentially wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, wrestling is a sport. And that's the other reason why it doesn't say Passini Wrestling or Passini Jiu-Jitsu. It says Passini Grappling because, it's not just wrestling. It's not just one thing. It's not just this. It's this weird, I shouldn't say weird. I keep using weird. It's driving me crazy. It's an interesting melting pot of different styles that effectively we've been doing since, for whatever you believe in, whenever, humans were created, we've been doing it since then, and above and beyond that, not only do we do it, but animals do it as well. So this is something that's just, genetically predisposed into us to roll around on the ground and show our dominance, even before we know any of the sport applications or the actual move skill sets. So, it's in us forever, and that's why we do it, and that's why you did it, and you didn't even know that you were wrestling, but you were wrestling.
Yeah, I think it's like encoded in our DNA, if you ask me, because there's something about being the hardest person to kill, the baddest person in the room. Of course, there's layers on top of that. Like, you also want to be the nicest, friendliest person in the room too. But the thing is, like, nobody wants to walk around, down the street and just be scared, and yet something is, simple as training jiu-jitsu and training grappling. Like, I like that. Like, when it was said grappling, I was like, oh, that's exactly what this is. that's all life is grappling. Think about it. Like when you're playing football, you're grappling if you're blocking or if you're trying to shed a block or if you're tackling somebody. That's grappling.
It's grappling.
I mean, think about if you grab a heavy box, you know, like a mattress or something to get shipped to your house and you had to pick that thing. You're grappling that thing.
Yeah, if you're trying to take a mattress up the stairs, oof.
Exactly. I mean, think about like all the things you just grab. Like if you just pick up a box, you're grappling that thing.
Yep.
If you just give somebody a hug to show your love and endearment for them, you're grappling with them. That's
an underhook battle to the you know, like in my house, I just give up the underhooks.
See, I was going to ask you that because when I first met you, you told me, and it's been that was one of the very first things that's been like ingrained in my brain is don't give up the underhooks when you give people hugs. So like, you know, when it comes to like, I give a lot of hugs. Like people at my work are very friendly. They just like to come give hugs. And it's like, if the dudes, I definitely can't, but like the ladies, you know, cause they're a lot shorter than I am. They come in, they get the underhooks. I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this. You could throw me, you know, like what if you're Ronda Rousey? You're just going to toss me.
Well, yeah, Ronda's going to throw anyone, but you know, I'll give up the underhooks, knowing that I've got a strong double overhook throw game. So, it's a bit of a bait. You know, Matt Paul talk about this. You know, you'll give up the underhook to somebody that you don't respect or you're baiting. So it's an interesting play there. So sometimes when you get the underhooks and you're like, I wonder why I have the underhook, it's on purpose.
See, I think you should have told me this years ago when we started this, because now I've just been so weary. Like there's like a 5-foot person. I'm like trying to get some underhooks on.
Nah,
like,
let him have the underhooks.
I know, but I didn't realize there was a whole second half to that of like, hey, you know, just let them because you can alpha them or something like that.
There's always an answer, right?
But do you worry about that alpha toxic masculinity thing that's a hot topic right now with what you do, what we're doing, and like the conversations and stuff like that? Do you worry about that, or you just still just do you?
I just still do me. I don't even know what toxic masculinity is. I mean, I've seen it, but I don't know what it is.
I work at a art school. I can teach you all about it, my friend.
I want to learn because I want perspective, you know, and that for me, it's, you know, and as weird as it sounds, and it's going to come off wrong, but it's not. It's like the only way you can know your enemy or your adversary is you have to know your enemy or your adversary. You got to know what they're bringing to the table so you can go, okay, how am I going to play this? Am I going to be cool? Am I not going to be cool? You know, and that's, so, you know, and, you know, the whole cliche, knowledge is power. You know, I'm going to try to understand all those people so that I can see how they tick, you know, and then you go, okay, cool. This is a fight that I don't want, or this is a fight that I'm going to have, or whatever. Or you just stay away because you know, you get to see how they operate and you're like, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm not about this life. I'm going to be across the street versus, you know, walking, you know, wherever. So
I also think that, you know, it's okay to not have a opinion on everything, like in this outrage culture we're in. So when you look at, let's just use it for jiu-jitsu here, just in context. When you see some jiu-jitsu, you're like, okay, yeah, that works. You know, maybe I would do it differently. And like, do you look at life the same way like you would perhaps like jiu-jitsu in that sense of like, okay, like, you know, your jiu-jitsu, it's like 1,000 ways to skin a cat or whatever. Like it gets the job done. I wouldn't do it that way. Why can't people just have that mentality?
Sure. You know, I don't really know. I think it's because, you know, everybody wants to be right, you know, and they want to tell you their way, or maybe they found some success in it and they want to, you know, a lot of times they're doing it because they're trying to help people. A lot of times they're doing it just because they're dicks.
That's true.
You know,
That's true.
or you know what it is? I was thinking about this. I was driving in and, you know, I see this dude, he's freaking out in his car and I'm like, bro, it's 8:15 in the morning on a Saturday. Like, what are you freaking out about? And then I'm like, well, maybe he's on his way to work, you know, or maybe he was up all night because he's got a newborn and, you know, babies don't sleep, you know, like, I don't know what that dude's going through. So then I'm thinking in my head, but you know, my life is pretty chill. So I just chill. I'm cruising. I'm driving the speed limit, nothing crazy. There's bumper to bumper traffic at, you know, on a Saturday at 8:15 in Chicago. And I'm like, okay, whatever. You know, I'm going to make it on time because I left on time. You know, I left with plenty of time to make it to where I need to make it. So if there's a little bit of traffic, it's no big deal, you know, and, you know, I think a lot of that outside stresses lead to people, you know, trying to maybe push their stuff onto you, because I think they're trying to do it for themselves, you know?
Yeah. Do you think that's like, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Is that a discipline problem in other people? Because I feel like if you just stay disciplined, like you're saying, you leave on time or you leave with the appropriate amount of time just in case you do get stuck in traffic, that like, hey, I don't have to stress. But I feel like people don't allow themselves that, or give themselves that discipline to allow that time to, maybe work on themselves or do the things that would relieve that stress, but people just constantly operate under that stress. So do you think discipline is that key factor of, hey, if I'm just a little more disciplined, I'm not going to be stressed out?
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. I think there's it's a big piece of it's a big puzzle with a lot of different pieces. That's definitely part of it. I think there's, everyone is, the people. I had a conversation yesterday and they're like, oh, I don't have time. And I'm like, no, you have time. You're just not making time, or you're not making the right choices to make sure that you're able to do the things you need to do, whether it's leaving at, 8:00 versus 8:10, and because, especially in a big city, 10 minutes, you miss that window. Woo. That's you may be in the car for an hour and a half, because it's a game changer. So I think it's definitely a bit of discipline, and I think it's also people overwhelm themselves with stuff that they don't necessarily have to, that's not really going to help their life, and I've lived that life, I've lived probably 5 different careers, before I started running the gym full time, and there's a lot of stuff. And the more that I could shed stuff away that didn't really matter, or just prioritize, like Jocko talks about, prioritize and execute. I used to have that on when I was running the companies. I would have that on my monitor, and I'd look and I'd be like, okay, well, I got to get all this stuff done. And then I'm like, okay, well, you know what? I don't have to get that done right now unless I have time to get that done. If I've got extra time, then I'm going to do that. But all the rest of the other stuff that, whatever that hit list was, those are the things that I had to 100% get taken care of. So I did those first and then go, cool, what's left? Or, oh, you know what? It's time to dip out, or whatever it is. And that helps everything, and we do that in jiu-jitsu. We do that in life. We do that, if you only got $20 and you're like, I got to get groceries this week, are you going to go buy a steak? Or are you going to buy,
peanut butter and jelly,
or a bunch of bags of vegetables that cost $1 a piece, and that's one meal. You're going to figure out a way to do exactly what you need to do, but other people don't.
So I want to talk about that, because I'm going to throw myself under the bus here. Ever since I met you, you'd always say, like, hey, you're going to do the things that are important to you in life. Mm-hmm. And I was still kind of in that run rampant, let's go have fun in the evening time kind of thing. And it was like, and you've known this, and I'm blasting myself here, like, I've had trouble sometimes. Like, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to pay for the gym this month, because I went out on a Friday night, and, especially in Chicago, it's easy to roll through 80, 120 bucks
Sure.
in a night. And you're like, well, that's a month's worth of coming to the gym almost. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. If you do 2 of those nights, you dang sure gone past, your monthly gym. And you always said to me, it's like, hey man, what's important to you? And honestly, like, you hear it, someone like me, it took me a long time to just even process it. Like, I knew what it meant. I heard it. And then I looked at myself objectively, and I was like, man, I'm not doing the things I should be doing. And I, like, for last night, for example, I had the opportunity to go out late and spend a bunch of money, and then have to wake up really early and, come do this thing that I've been looking forward to for a long time. And I just told myself last night, I was like, 2 things. 1, it's not worth spending all that extra money to try to impress somebody that I'm interested in right now, kind of thing. And 2, I've been looking forward to this conversation. I don't want to show up all hungover and give the listeners or you not 100% of what I'm doing. And so I want to put that out there for everybody that's listening that says, hey, I don't have the money to, go to jiu-jitsu or go to the gym or go to gymnastics, whatever it is you love doing. Like, watch what you do in your everyday life, and you're going to figure out those are the things that are important to you. And if you see a lot of toxic things that you need to get rid of, like, maybe I shouldn't go out and drink every Friday, Saturday night. Maybe I should do it maybe once every 2 weeks, once a month, once every 3 months, whatever it is. That's kind of like the self-reflection that I've had to have on myself, to realize, like, hey, what are your priorities? And, let's get them straight, because what do you enjoy the most? Don't give up what you enjoy the most or you get the most from for a little bit of pleasure somewhere else. If you're, and it could be spending money on food. It doesn't have to be going out and partying and things like that. It could be like going and having expensive meals that you're like, do I really need that? No, I could have had those same friends over at the house. We could have grilled. But we were kind of talking a little bit about the discipline and stuff and like in routines. Like, what is your everyday routine? Like, if you were like I should say your projected everyday routine, like, hey, this is going to be qualified as a good day. And I want that day to be like when you have to come instruct a class. So that needs to be in there.
Well, first, before all of that, any day that you wake up and you're able to, make it through the day is a good day. You know what I mean? Because you woke up, then, it's, every day, every day is important, right? So, for me to have a good day, every day is a good day. Even when I have shit days, those are good days, because that's a day that you learn something. It's like losing in competition. When you win in competition, the elation of, conquest and, all the cool stuff that happened, 100% washes over anything that you may have learned. And then, maybe a week or 2 weeks later when you're running through that over and over again, then you're like, oh, there was this piece. Okay, cool. But maybe not, like if you're not learning anything, right? Because it's, you have a great day. Oh, they made my coffee right and there was no traffic and all that, like that's good. That's a good day. But it's also a good day when you're stuck in traffic for 2.5 hours going, damn it, I left 5 minutes late and now I can't get my coffee and all that. That's a good day too.
Yeah. So just a quick segue here on that. I've been telling myself this lately. When you have like those things that, the coffee's made just right, or there's no traffic or nothing gets in the way, like there's no obstacles. And, at the end of the day, most people are like, oh, this is a good day because there's no obstacles. But then I start to think about that those are worldly things that I can't control. So why would I let that dictate whether it was a good day or not? Like you're saying. So then what if you were sitting in traffic for 2 hours and this and that? How is that different any other day? Because even I can't control either one of those, whether the traffic's good or whether the traffic's bad. But what I can control is, what's in my head. What am I thinking? Who am I trying to help that day and stuff like that. I feel like that's the mental aspect that a lot of people should, when they say change your thinking, look at the things that you can control and can't control and go from there, because you can't make the traffic disappear. You can't make that bad coffee go away unless you make it yourself and redo it. So, and if that's the case, that's the things you need to do. Take a different route that there's no traffic. It's just going to take longer, like there would be traffic, or maybe make your own coffee and then make it the way you like it. So there is no complaints. Like just removing those obstacles yourself. Those are things you can do, but you also have to realize that you can't control the ones that do come across your way.
Sure. Yeah. And I think those days are supposed to happen. I think we're supposed to have bad days so that we have the perspective of what good days are, air quotes, good days, bad days. I think that's a piece of the puzzle. So, I embrace a bad day the same way I embrace a good day. It's actually the way I look at it, and this is me being, whatever, a sadist or whatever. The good days, like when winning in comp, I don't think about those days, and because there was nothing. It was almost like the day was flat. Just like, what did I do today? Nothing. There was nothing. There wasn't anything that stood out to me that was like, okay, cool, we learned today, or I had some adversity today and then I got through it, So like I almost don't even think about those days, but the bad days, I think about those days. What do I need to do? How do I need to change? How do I need to tweak this? How do I recalibrate? How do I do this? How do I do that? And that could be just the way my mind works. But yeah, I like those bad days, because those are fun days.
Yeah, I like what you said there, because those are the days that give you perspective on, what good times are, what good days are. You have to have something. If you never have anything bad in your life or an obstacle to come, to overcome, then how can you? I don't know. Maybe it's because I can't understand it, but I don't understand, if you're given everything, how can you appreciate it when you work for it and you've bled for it, you sweated for it, you cried for it, whatever it may be. When you finally achieve what it is that you wanted to achieve, that's when I feel like a real human and real emotion comes out. And I just don't know how you get that without having hard times, bad days, obstacles, things like that.
There are people in this world that are oblivious to, adversity and those things. But you know what? I think those people need to be there. It was, my mom's a very religious lady, and she I was a troubled youth. So she spent a lot of time praying for me, whether it helped or not, I don't know, if it helped her, then it helped, but she was having a rough day. And I also don't like saying bad days, good days, I'll say a good day, but I like saying rough days. Right.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. Just rephrase it.
Just rephrase it. Yeah. As, today was a rough day. I say that with my kids. They're like, oh, I had a bad day at school. I'm like, no, you had a rough day at school, because bad has a bad connotation to it. Like when people say, oh, you have bad behavior, that's why, I tweak the mindset and I say, you're making poor choices today. It's not like you're not bad, because they're not bad. Right. But they're making poor choices. Right. So I strip away that word bad, and it's just tweak the vernacular. I think that's the right term.
I think so too. I mean, it sounds highly intelligent, so I'm just going to let it roll.
Yeah. So you tweak it, because then it changes how that's viewed. So like bad is, oh, we've been told for years, bad, oh, you're bad, versus poor choices versus, rough, I just tweak the words to get rid of that normal, the normal sayings that people say that give that bad, or give that response to where people want to shut down.
Yeah. It's to me, it's taking a different perception on the same thing, because a lot of people say the same thing when they just word it differently. Sure. And then they don't understand how they can't agree with each other. Sure. It's like, hey, you're saying the same thing. You're just both using different terminology here. And I like that, because you just give yourself a different perception of, was it a bad day? Was it a rough day? Because like a bad day would be like if you lose a loved one. A rough day is you stubbed your toe and, you broke your toe. Like, you're going to be okay. It could be worse. That's how my grandma always taught me to look at things, like, hey, like it could be worse. You could have cancer. You could be dying. But no, yeah, you just maybe had a breakup or something. Like, it's not the end of the world.
I'm going to flip the script on you with that one, right?
Oh, no.
Perception, we talk about the way we can view things, Maybe losing that loved one that day was the best thing that could have happened for that person, because they were in pain for 15 years.
True.
You know what I'm saying? True. So maybe that's not a bad day. Maybe that's a good day.
And true. And whoever it's happening to, maybe it could force them to grow up and become more of an adult, more responsible. You never know.
I sat in the hospital with my grandfather, and he was like in and out of, I almost want to call it like being delusional. He wasn't there anymore. He was there, he's in, he's out, he's, whether maybe he's in that other dimension, I don't know. I walk in the room and he like perked up, said my name, and the rest of the family looked at me like he hasn't said anybody's name in a day and a half, So I just had a normal conversation, just like it was any other day. How you doing, Grandpa? First thing he said is, I'm tired. I said, yeah, and he's like, next thing he said is, I'm sick of fighting. And I said, well, Grandpa, you fought for, 25 years with all these heart disease and stuff like that. I was like, you have a great family. You don't have to fight anymore. You did your job. And he then told me, call your father. And at that point, I'm like, cool, it's the end. But I was never like, of course, you're always sad when you lose a loved one. But I was happy that he was able to not have to deal with that pain anymore, sitting in a hospital bed, hating. That wasn't the life that he wanted to live. He was a man's man. He was in war. He worked, 30 years for the government. He would, so that wasn't his life. That wasn't his view of life, and he didn't want to just be sitting there in a hospital bed hooked up to all these machines. So when he got the affirmation, I think that's the right word, affirmation to say that, he doesn't have to fight anymore. And he did his job. The pressure was released. And at that point, then, he didn't even make any funny noises. He literally just said, everybody come over here, give me a hug. Everybody kind of sat around him, and he just went to sleep. No pain, no nothing. And days before that, he's, making noises and moving and all that. And it was like all the pain, everything had been lifted out, and it's just time to fade away. So to circle back, that was a good day. Even though it was a rough day. Yeah,
that's true. And honestly, that's probably one of the best stories I've ever heard of somebody, just passing away or just going. Because, you always hear people say, no, I want to go on my sleep. It's peaceful. It's this and it's that. I think that is actually the coolest story, because I'm just taking an assumption here that your grandpa, just wanted to feel like, hey, everybody was okay with it, because he was going to keep fighting for everybody. Like he was not selfish about it. He was like, no, he's like, these people want me here. I'm trying to fight. And when, had that conversation, and everybody came and gave him a hug, and then he's like, you could just tell it's like the weight of the world was just lifted, it sounds like. And then he could just like, I could just close my eyes now, because my family loves me. They know I love them. This is, it's just hitting to a point where It's not good for me. It's not good for them. Like, but they love me. I love them. It's okay to go.
Yeah. It's like, I have these conversations with people regularly, and everyone's like, there's this term that one of my, I call my life coach, he's like my big brother, Tate Fletcher. He talks about this thing called seeking death, right? And everyone thinks that's morbid, and they're like, oh, why are you trying to seek death? And it's actually the exact opposite. It's about seeking life, right? It's about, but everyone's afraid of dying, right? Everyone's like, oh, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I don't think people are afraid of dying. I think they're afraid of how they're going to die. I don't think they're necessarily afraid of death itself, right? Because that's the next step, the next phase in the journey. I think they're afraid of how they're going to die. Because you get in a nasty car wreck, that's not going to be a fun way to go out. You go to sleep after a glorious life, not a bad way to go out. So I think I think there's more of I don't think it's the actual act of not being here anymore. Maybe it is. Some people like want to cling on to this and like, this is my identity, this is all that. But
it's all you understand.
I think it's the angst and the anxiety of how it's going to happen.
Yeah, dude, you're talking to a guy when I take some mind quests, I think about that stuff. I'm like, man, because as a kid, I used to always have these. I had two fears as a kid growing up of like, I thought I could picture my death. And I always, my number one uno here was always going to be in a car crash. It's the same reason today I can't go to sleep on an airplane. It's the same reason I can't go to sleep in a car, whether, obviously whether I'm driving, you're driving, people I trust, it doesn't matter who's driving that car. I can't go to sleep. It does not matter. And I was like, that dates back to being a kid. Like, I've always had this fear, like, hey, that's how I'm going to die. That's not how I want to die. But then I always thought, well, once I tried to get past that, I was like, oh, I'm going to die in a fire. And I'm thinking to myself, no, this is my perception. I got to change my way of thinking because one, it's not healthy. And two, I want to live to 120 years old. And then I want that story now. Like that, your grandpa's ending is now my new ending. That's going to be forever in my head. I want to hug the people that are, still around me and love me at the end of my life and just know that, okay, I can go now. I don't have to keep fighting to keep it, keep my body here, my mind here. It's okay to go.
How pissed would you be if you were like, I'm going to die in a car crash. I'm going to die in a car crash. And then you like stub your toe, get a staph infection.
And died from
that. How pissed would you be when you're like, God damn, I knew this whole time.
Yeah. Well, depending on whatever's after this, and if I can talk to somebody about that, if they played a hand in it, like the Reaper, like the Grim Reaper, I'd be like, yo, man, like, what did I do in my life that I deserve to die from a staph infection?
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't have gave me a warrior's death.
Right, exactly.
Like, stabbed me with a samurai sword in Japan or something. Like,
maybe you did too many good things in that life, and they were like, listen, man, you did all the cool stuff. Now we got to take you out with stubbing your toe.
Well, just like the movies, it's always like the senseis, the masters, and like the well-respected people. Like they go out with the worst deaths.
Yeah,
it's usually like the meatheads that actually get the warrior's death, get stabbed in battle or something. That's or shot.
Yeah, they probably made poor choices to get themselves into those scenarios.
I should have asked Adam and some of those, like my military friends, like, is that something you think about, like when you're over in war, like, hey, if I go out today, if it's God's will or whatever, somebody believes in, that I'm going to die a warrior's death? Like, because you don't, we see it in movies, but we don't really think about that today.
I've never been to war, so I have no basis for judgment. There has definitely been some times in my life where I've made some poor choices and found myself into some interesting situations to where I was like, okay, I'm not concerned about dying, but once again, that thought was, man, am I gonna get stabbed? Am I getting shot? So and that's probably the basis for my thought process of everybody being wondering how they're going to die, not if they're going to die, so, I'm not exactly sure. I've heard 100 podcasts with dudes telling their stories, so I have that frame of reference, from hearing stories from other dudes that were like, listen, I wasn't ready to go, or, whatever. So it's hard to say what the thought process is, but.
Well, yeah. What about like when, you're bouncing or something, do you think like, hey, if I get stabbed tonight and if that's the way I go, like that's a warrior's death? You never think of it like that?
No. The big thing was, for me was like, if I get stabbed tonight bouncing, that's going to really piss me off. But then there's probably going to be some other bad stuff that happens as well. because, you know, unless somebody, somebody were to just run up and stab you in the back or whatever, you know, there was going to be some fighting that was done after that. You know, that's the one thing people think, you know, somebody gets stabbed. There's a few places where you can stab a human that are going to have a pretty quick effect on them. But most of the time, you know, people don't even know they got stabbed. They think they got punched. And then all of a sudden they look down and they're like, oh shit, I'm bleeding. You know, so there's a lot of those things, you know, to where that wouldn't have necessarily been that end all be all, you know. And like I said, depending on where you know, what you stab, you know, you could go down fast, or it may not be life threatening at all.
I used to, when I was doing construction back in Oklahoma, I worked with this guy. He was just looked like a Mack truck, like all muscle and about 6 foot tall and, you know, tatted out. Sweetest guy. And he told me a story one time because I was kind of scared we had to hang some pipe about, I don't know, it was about 40 foot up in the air, but like this little scaffolding, this temporary scaffolding we kind of put up.
Sketchy.
It was super sketchy. Like it was against all OSHA protocols and this and that. And I looked at him and I was like, I don't really want to do this. And he looked at me because we're both, you know, third year apprentices together. And he goes, this is nothing. He goes, I've, you know, made less money with more danger. And I was like, I just looked at him. I'm like, dude, I was like, have you been up there yet? I'm like, that's pretty dangerous. I was like, how have you made less money with more danger? And he's like, oh, I've never told you the story about how I got into construction, or right before I got into construction, did I? I was like, no, man. He goes, I used to be a bouncer, and he names the strip club that he worked at there in Oklahoma. And I was like, oh, I've been there. And he goes, yeah. He goes, actually, I still kind of work for him on Fridays. He goes, but 3 years ago, right before I got in, he goes, it was a late night. He goes, we had an altercation inside the bar. He goes, I had to escort some gentlemen out, me and a couple of the guys there. Well, they were threatening a stripper. He said, when the night was over, we were closing up. He goes, I had to walk her out to her car. Those guys came back. He goes, and they came back with weapons. And I was like, oh man,
that happens.
And I go, and so I was like, what did you do? He goes, I tried to get her to her car as quickly as possible. He goes, they opened up fire. He took a bullet to the side, and she got shot and killed. And he said that they kept shooting at him, and he just rolled underneath the car. But like, I guess, and you know how quickly things can happen. Yeah. He goes, and where they were, he goes, we were close to a police station. He goes, so by then, he goes, those guys got sketched out or something. Somebody came out. He goes, I don't know. He goes, I just got shot and rolled under a car. Pulls up his shirt, shows me the bullet wound. It went in and out. And I was thinking, oh my goodness,
that could have been a lot worse. You know, there's a lot of vital stuff that's on the side of your body that if that had gone in, that could have been really bad.
Right.
So.
And that's why I was looking at him, and I was like, I go, what was going through your mind? He was like, dude, he goes, it all happened so quickly. He goes, the adrenaline, the pain. He goes, but the part that gets me, he's like, when I looked over underneath that car, he's like, I was looking at her limpless, you know, lifeless body laying there, and I was thinking, all right, man, I'm gonna get up there. I'm gonna hang this.
Let's go hang this. Yeah, let's go hang this pipe now. Yeah,
we're gonna earn this. We were making like $26 an hour, $24 an hour at the time. I was like, we'll go earn this over your $10 an hour job. Like, yeah, man, yeah. I'll keep you safe. Like, I didn't know what to say after that. I just kind of wanted to hug the guy.
Yeah,
because he was such a sweetheart. Like, and I got to know him, but I never knew that about him. And then when I heard that, I was
maybe that's why he's such a sweetheart.
I think so, because he realized, and he had 2 boys too, and he was talking, and he like went on in the story and was talking about. He goes, honestly, he goes, I was afraid I wasn't ever going to see my kids again, and you know he wasn't married or anything, and I don't know if the mom was around, and I just, oh man, I felt for somebody. Then I started thinking, I was like, man, you never know anybody's story. You got to be nice to them, or you should be nice to them, because that's rough. Like that dude almost didn't see his kids again, and then he was staring there at a lifeless body. That could have been him.
Yeah, working security for all those years, that was there was a lot of times where, you know, where I'd be driving to, we'll call it the office, you know, I was running the security team, driving there and thinking, man, I know tonight's going to be a bad night. You know, go back to that bad thing. You know, it's going to be a banger tonight.
The energy.
Yeah, you can feel it in the air. You just know, you're like, oh, some shit's going to go down tonight. And, you know, there were days where I was like, oh, I don't want to be doing this. But I had to. You know, you had to. So you try to be as safe as possible. Those nights I would be extra nice to everybody, you know, and try to be more in tune with what's going on, feel those vibrations better, keep my head on a quicker swivel, and try to see when those scenarios are going to start, and really not that you could really not pay attention. In my position, I had to be the best guy on the squad. I had to train my guys to be here's what I see, here's what you need to see, here's what you need to look for, here's what you need to do. You need to call me when you think there's a situation, and I'll go in and take care of it. I'm going to keep you as safe as possible. And then if I need your help, then you're going to come and, swinging. So that was what and I wouldn't allow any of my security guys to well, unless there was Matt. If it was Matt, I would allow, Matt and I worked security for a long time. So I'd let him kind of have carte blanche. He would work the door, I would work inside, and so, but I wouldn't let my guys, deal with an altercation by themselves. But I would all the time, because my job was not to, my job was to de-escalate the situation before something happened, and go in there and because I could see with body language and all that stuff, and how humans work, whether they're impaired or not impaired, the level of impairment, what they're going to do, and a lot of that came from fighting, learning how to read people, because you got to read somebody who's trying to, smash your face in, and you're trying to smash their face in. But so you learn very quickly to read all those biomechanic stuff and emotional things and all that. So I would go in there and de-escalate,
Yeah. And I want to say that, like, to the listeners too, when, especially, you did it a lot more, I would say more when I first came, and I still appreciate the fact when you do it, is you would talk about like situational jiu-jitsu, because not everybody we have here competes. Like, I'm somebody who doesn't compete, but I come in for like the self-defense, the health reasons and benefits to come here. But you used to always teach, like, hey, when you get somebody in this position, it's all about control. Control them, keep your head on a swivel, because they might have a buddy coming to kick you in the head if you're on top of them, and things like that. Do you think that that's a vital part of teaching jiu-jitsu to people? Because you like, it is the survival, it is the look out for the buddy coming to club punch you.
I think there's different kinds of jiu-jitsu, right? There are schools in Chicago that focus solely just on IBJJF style sport jiu-jitsu, and that's awesome. I got no problems with that. And then there's guys that have more of an emphasis on self-defense. And then there's people that have a mix. And then there's people that, and most of us that have been doing jiu-jitsu for long enough can say, okay, in this scenario, this is what you want to kind of look out for. But there are going to be times where you're going to do things in sport jiu-jitsu class that I would never advocate on the street.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm saying, like, to to people listening, like, you point that out to us. You say, hey, like, in sport jiu-jitsu, do this. Mm-hmm. But if you're on the street, don't ever do that, because you put yourself, and then you explain that, you give an example of, like, here's the situation that could happen, and this is why it's not good to do the sport style, because you're vulnerable to this or this. And, like, also with Panda doing, like, the SOG stuff when we would stay late, like, he's somebody I give credit to. He always taught me, he's like, you don't have to be nice to anybody. Like, when situations are especially hairy, he's like, you need to tell somebody to get off you or get out of your space. Mm-hmm. He's like, and you have to push them back. He goes, do it. He goes, and then back yourself up too. He goes, don't just rely on pushing them back or getting them back. He goes, move yourself. And that's a lot of jiu-jitsu too. Like, and we're talking just standing up, face to face. Move them, move you.
Or move in close enough to where they can't really hit you with anything but a headbutt.
Right. And, he showed like a bunch of different, stuff for that too. But like, he always said, like, he goes, put your hand there and say, like, hey, back up. He's like, you don't have to be nice at that point. He goes, because by then, he's like, you can feel that, situation, that moment escalating and this and that. It's the same thing you're talking about. Like, you're watching their body language as, when you're bouncing or whatever. Like, hey, is this person, dipping down? Are they about to throw a right hand or whatever? What are they doing? Like, just
I'm watching body language all the time. When something catches out of my eye, I'm like, all right, is this guy a tweaker? Is he just strung out on drugs? Is this dude looking to steal something? This dude looking to take my wallet? What's the scenario? What's the context? Why are they acting that way? That's not normal behavior. Is it, are they, whatever. So I'm always analyzing those situations. A lot of times I wish I could just turn it off and like have the ignorance is bliss and just float through the world. But I can't turn that off. It's probably because of the upbringing that I had, growing up in not the greatest of, neighborhoods for my formative years. You learn things about humans and you get to see the dark side about humans, and you're like, okay, this is a thing and it exists, and it's good to have it, but then sometimes that kind of becomes your whole world. So that there's a dichotomy to it.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd want to turn it off though, because you always want your self-awareness at a higher level.
It's like redlining the whole time. Sometimes it's good to just take a break.
Okay, so that's going to be a perfect segue into back to that original question of your daily routine, because you're talking about redlining. Like, well, yeah, you may be redlining all day. Like most of the days I do, like my daily stuff is, work, school, this brand, trying to keep a social life, trying to go to jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. Like there's days that they're so long that I just redline, but then I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to sleep and I'm going to get refreshed.
It's good.
Let's go into your routine, because you're a human being. You're not even a human being. You're an alien that doesn't sleep that much, because like I'll send you a message and then I'll see it's like read at 3:45 in the morning. I'm like, and I'll send it at like midnight or something, or at 11, and then you'll see it at like 3 in the morning. I'm like, this dude is not sleeping.
Yeah, sleeping is not I'm pretty decent at a bunch of things in this world, and sleeping is not one of them. But I've always been that way. It's been that way my whole life. Just, I just never slept well. It's good for productivity per se. Some people would argue that, but I think there's such a diverse type of human. I think there's some of us that are out there where we just don't need as much sleep. When I get 5 hours of sleep, oh my God, it's amazing, But I can run on 2 or none for 3 days, or there were days back when I was doing security to where I would run late night jiu-jitsu class and get out of here at like 1, go home, take a shower. So maybe I get to bed by about 2 or 2. Let's just call it 2 to keep the math easy, and then I'd be up again to leave the house at 7 o'clock to go to the day job, and which I don't have to do anymore, which is glorious. But then I would go work all day and then drive home, eat some food, go to the club, rinse and repeat. And I wouldn't sleep from, I get whatever you call 2 hours of sleep, or 4 or 5 hours of sleep. And that would be 4 or 5 hours of sleep until Sunday night at 9 o'clock. It's not healthy. I'm not advocating it for anyone, but I was able to do it, and there's other people out there that can do it. So
do you feel like now with the sleep being a big topic with a lot of like the network we're in, have you been looking at any of those studies and the things people are talking about, the bro science?
Yeah, I look at some of it.
Do you think that, hey, maybe I should sleep an extra 2 hours?
Probably. I'm pretty good now that I'm not doing the day job, and now that I'm not doing that, I'm every day I'm up at 4:45 in the morning. And then whether I decide to take a little, napper or whatever, but 5 hours works really, really well for me, and I can get a lot done. And, or even 6 hours, I'm one of those people that if I sleep too much, then I'm like really dragging the next day. So yeah, but for example, circle back talking about, making those good choices. Last night I went to bed at midnight, and I was like, listen, I'm going to be up. I got to do a podcast. I want to be as best as I can for this podcast, So I went to bed way earlier than what I normally would, and got up and had a good breakfast, and then was like, I'm going to get some coffee, and then we're going to do the damn thing. So, so I got good sleep last night.
So you prioritize your sleep for what you have the next day. So if you have a busy day, you'll.
Yeah. And, realistically, I teach classes from, let's call it 5 o'clock to 10 o'clock. That's only 5 hours worth of output. There's a lot of admin and other things that, involve the gym, but my 100% on, I got to be, teaching and running around and making sure everybody's doing this and all that. So I can maybe get a little bit less sleep because my output's only 5 hours. Your output at the office is 8 hours.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether most people are actually really only doing 5 hours worth of work, right?
Yeah.
We've all worked office jobs. So
yeah, I was about to say, we understand there's some downtime.
Yeah. But, if you look at output, my output for that is less demanding than, let's say, a lawyer who's going to be, has got a bunch of court dates and they're going to be on for 12 hours,
High stress situation.
I don't really have stress in my life. Everyone has stress in your life. I shouldn't say that. I don't view it. I don't really look at it as stress, but I have a glorious life. I teach jiu-jitsu. That's all I do, and I can go shoot my bow, and I could go to the grocery store in the middle of the day. Like I don't, you know,
you can make your doctor's appointments Monday through
yeah,
Friday.
you can do whatever. Yeah.
Where people are mostly at work. Yeah.
You know, I tell people that I retired, you know, once I left the real world and I just started teaching jiu-jitsu, like I teach jiu-jitsu. I tell people at my kids' school, they're like, how are you know, what are you doing? You know, how do you drop your kids off at school? I'm like, I'm retired. And I just leave it at that. It's nobody's business what else I do. You know, a lot of people figured it out. You know,
they look at you and they're
see me on the internet, right?
This young guy is retired.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're doing what you love, it doesn't feel like you are working a job. That's what people ask me. They'll say like, hey, how do you do all these different things? And then how do you do your own brand stuff? Well,
that's not work.
It's not work.
Yeah.
I would do this if I won the lottery.
I'd do this regardless. I'm doing it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if I didn't have to work a day in my life, and people would be like, well, why aren't you on a yacht somewhere doing whatever? Well, okay, I might be on that yacht, but I'm taking this with me. I'm going to take this podcast with me because I'm going to talk to all these people on this yacht.
I love that. Hey, what would you do if you won the lotto? And because I already have that answer. Because everybody dreams about that. I think that's good because it puts it into perspective of an unlimited opportunity for like what you would do, right? There's no reason, you would have no excuses why you couldn't do that, barring physical, you know, type of scenarios. And it's crazy. I would have a gigantic gym.
I was about to say, you just upgrade this gym and
Dude,
do the same thing.
I would do exactly the same thing. I would just have all the little toys and things that I would want in that super gym. And then I would come and teach class every freaking day. You know, that's it.
That's heaven.
Yeah.
But that's what's so cool is like, think about it. Like if everybody's listening, if Josh was to win the lottery, he's still teaching jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about that. So you're not getting any sleep. How are you recovering? Because you roll most every night. You know, minus if, you know, you got a competition shortly about to appear and you're like, hey, I got to take a couple of days off, right? You know, because I got a competition on Saturday kind of thing. Or you're just like, I had this procedure or something, you know.
I just don't roll on weigh-in day, but I roll like, you know, if we're competing on Saturday, I'll roll on Thursday. Yeah. I want to stay sharp. You know, I want to make sure that my timing's on point, you know, and I'm not learning new jiu-jitsu that week. You know, I'm making sure I'm in shape and I'm recognizing all the things I need to recognize. So yeah, I just, you know.
But how do you recover without sleep is my question.
I don't know. I just do it. Just keep doing it.
And you roll every night because maybe it's me and this back injury that I can't seem to beat. But man, if I roll, like there's mornings, and I've talked about this with some of you guys before, that there's mornings I can't walk. I have to physically, mentally think of like how to step my left foot and move my right foot at next because my back's in so much pain. It feels so locked up. I'm like, and then I start to think, I'm like, come on, man, you can do this. Josh does this every day. And then how do you do that every day? Because like I'm saying, when tomorrow morning, if I roll hard today, I'm gonna be real. Tomorrow morning's gonna be tough for your boy to walk.
Get your ass up, get moving.
Do you have those days? Because I know you battle injuries.
Day.
Everybody battles injuries that does this.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on the mats for, you know, almost 30 years if you include wrestling, and there are days that, you know, I've, you know, it's not smart. I'm not saying it's smart. I'm saying this is what I do. Is that when I wake up and I can't get out of bed, I get super pumped to get out of bed because I know that I put in a lot of work yesterday and some good shit's gonna come out of that.
Let's expand upon that because you're also a father of two girls that are full of energy. Mm-hmm. What if you can't walk that next morning? Like
no, there is no you can't walk. I mean, unless you literally like, you know, break your leg, whatever, you know, you're just getting up and doing the damn thing. You just do it. You just get up, you know, and you feel like shit. And then maybe you do some mobility stuff. You hit the foam roller or you sit in a massage chair, whatever you got to do to get yourself able to get back to work. And then you do it all the next day. And then the minute you hit the mats and the minute you know, take an hour worth of technique and you start moving around and all that, barring serious injuries, of course, right? You know, if you broke your leg, you know, whatever. And then once the blood starts flowing, you're not thinking about it anymore. At least I'm not. And then you think about it when you can't, you know, the drive home and you can't get out of your truck and you're like, oh, I put in some work today.
Those are the days I'm talking about. Then you're like, man, I have to go be a father right now. I have to mow the lawn in the morning. Like,
it's good. It's all good stuff. Yeah. It's literally, you know, being a father's not a chore in terms of, you know, getting up and playing with the kids. That's the easy stuff. The hard stuff is, you know, if they're having a rough day, how, like, you know, and I have girls and, you know,
I'm still trying to figure that species out myself. I don't
Me
care.
too,
I
man.
don't care if they're
Me
1
too.
or if they're 100. I don't understand them.
Yeah, it's the how my normal outwork, or it just doesn't work with them because they're different creatures. So I have to really sit down and go, how am I going to handle this situation? And I'm not, I'm not a saint by any means, but it's trying to, the big thing is I'm trying to give them the best opportunities and the best information to make the right choices, so that a lot of that stuff helps kind of self-regulate. There's definitely a bit of that, grow them into good humans, and then a lot of this stuff they don't have to worry about. But they deal with bullies and all that stuff. Like, my older daughter's got like, she's a gymnast, so she's like this ball of muscle, and little girls at school will be like, oh, you're fat, and she'll look at him and be like, yo, I'm not fat. Like, I don't have an ounce of fat on my body. It's like why are you calling me fat? Like what's wrong? And and I explained to them, listen, most likely they're saying that stuff because they're unhappy with their situation or their life or whatever it is. I said, so don't let that get to you, because if they call you fat and you're not fat, that's just their bullshit coming out, and then and now they're at the point to where they're like, oh, that's your issue, not mine. And they just walk away, because if one of my little girls grabbed onto one of these little girls, it'd be a problem.
Yeah, they'd be in trouble.
Yeah, because she almost put me to sleep when we were demonstrating class one time, and nobody believed me. And then so I lined up the entire squad and had my she was 7 at the time, had her slap on a rear naked choke, and watched the look on all these grown men's faces like, holy shit, this little girl's gonna put me out, So that was like, it's that in itself was a good lesson to learn.
So do you practice jujitsu on the kids and then teach them at the house? Because I always wonder, because like when we come in here and I think to myself, I'm like, okay, so this is the path. Let's say we're changing from one path to another path. Well, you didn't have anybody to rep it on. And when you do your technique and you show it to us, I've rolled with handfuls of black belts, and I can't tell the difference between theirs and your technique, because it's so impressive. Like, it's not BS is what I'm saying. But where do you find the time, and like, do you rep it on your kids to be like, okay, this is how you do it? Like, so when you come to show us, it's so precise every time.
It's full control over my own body is really what it is that, and it's reps. There's no magic. It's just reps. I've done, the majority of the paths that I'm teaching you guys, I've done hundreds of thousands of times, probably thousands of times. Like I talk about in the Jiu-Jitsu 101 class when we work on shrimping, because like a new Jiu-Jitsu player, they don't know how to shrimp. They don't know how to move their body. They don't know how to do, like they don't know how to do a forward roll. They don't know how to do any of that. And so at this point in my Jiu-Jitsu career, I've probably done a couple 100,000 shrimp moves. So it's like I don't have to think about that move. I dive deep into the philosophy and why you do it, when you do it, how to do it, but I don't have to tell my body to do it. Half the time, my body just doesn't. I don't even think about it. And a lot of my jiu-jitsu is like that. I've done it so much that I don't have to do it. And then that being said, we're dealing with jiu-jitsu is infinite, as we all know. But there is finite portions of it, right? We're dealing with the human body. They've got, well, I shouldn't say everyone has. So 2 arms, 2 legs, and a neck. So that's a finite thing to deal with. So when I'm moving my body, there becomes all these structures that are in place based on the dynamics of the human body. That's going to still be there, barring, once again, you're missing a leg, you're missing an arm. If you don't have a head, it's impressive how you're doing jiu-jitsu, but we need to talk.
The headless jiu-jitsu
player. The headless jiu-jitsu player. Like, you ain't choking that dude arm bars and leg locks all day. So
it's my next movie now.
But there's like, those things are finite. So even though you can take something that's infinite, you're still dealing with a stimulus that's finite, which would be the human body. So then there's structures that are created. So once you understand those structures, then everything, it's not that you understand everything, because it's infinite and there's infinite ways to get in and out and through, and there's going to always be new moves, and there's going to always be modifications of things, but we're still dealing with structures that need to be created based on the human body. So it takes that infinite number and scales it down to a much more manageable piece. And so that's why I can watch a jiu-jitsu move and I can watch it like 10 times and go, cool, I know what to do, because I understand the structure that's created with the movement and the human body. And then that's how I'm able to do it, So it's like a 2-part question that, and then I learned all about the human body when I was going to be a nurse. So I went to nursing school, and that was the best thing that I ever did for my jiu-jitsu. I'm going to be a tactical nurse. This is going to be great. I'm going to be on the floor. I'm going to be dealing with gunshot wounds and all that fun stuff. This is going to be awesome. And then I'm like, oh, dude, I'm learning how to literally fix a human body, which allows me to destroy a human body, right?
Yeah. You were going to be a nurse.
I was going to be a nurse.
Huh. The things you listen to,
yeah,
and the things you find out about your friends that you never knew.
I left nursing school and was like, I'm just going to run the gym full time. And it did not go over well with everybody.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Because most of your family's in the medical field.
They are.
So that I can see that battle. Same thing with mine. Like most of my family's in construction, and when I left, Oklahoma and left construction and, to gamble on myself here in Chicago, like everybody, even not only did my bosses scold me, but like my family's like, yo, dude, what are you doing?
That's okay. It's good. It's good motivation.
Just sit back and see. So did you feel a lot of that when you're like, no, I'm not going to be a nurse. I'm going to, do my thing, be an instructor and live life the way I want to.
Here's the real reason why I left that. I'm deep into the program. And then I realized, I don't have that compassion for the people that I'm supposed to be taking care of. So I'm doing them a disservice to be sitting here and just punching a clock or just going through the motions. Like that's when you're in a field like that, like when I the action of being like in the ER, it's the action. It's not the, like, oh, I'm fixing this.
You just like the intense situation.
Right. It's, you're doing the job of, I'm going to plug this bullet hole. I'm going to seal the box. Right. But are you doing that because you want to seal the box? Or are you doing that because you actually give a shit about the person? You want that person to live? I think it's got to be both. Sealing the box and getting all the adrenaline, doing all that stuff, like that's cool. And not that I wouldn't care about another human being, because I absolutely 100% do. But if my driving force isn't, I need to care about this person, when I'm up there having to wipe somebody's ass, which I was not about, I was not about that life. Like I'll wipe my kid's ass, but I'm not going to, some random person that I don't know that I'm only going to see for a week. Like that was really hard for me. And then I felt like, listen, I'm not going to be doing them the dignity or the service that they really need. So I need to not do this. So that's why I left, and then I was like, I would be much better suited to serve my community teaching jiu-jitsu and helping people down the path with this avenue versus the other. So that's the real reason why I left.
And I just want to like say, from my perspective, it's not much different what you do now from that, minus wiping people's asses. That not only are you a head instructor for a jiu-jitsu school, but you're also a therapist. And I know you know that.
Combat life coach.
Because
as one of my students dubbed me. Yeah.
You've been my therapist for a while. And then I looked at, honestly, when I came back this time, because some people know that I did leave the gym for a little bit, but when I came back, because this is home to me, and I'm trying to avoid telling that deep, heartfelt story on this episode. But when I came back and I was thinking to myself, I was like, I'm a different human being than when I left than now when I come back. I was like, I shouldn't put that pressure on Josh of, hey, I still need him to be that therapist, that life coach, whatever it was. Because that's kind of what you are to a lot of people here. And you have been for me. And I mean, realistically, you still are for me.
It's what I live for.
You like that? I mean, because
the only reason why
people, it gets deep.
Yeah. If I had a nickel for every time I had a conversation with one of my guys, tough, strong ass dudes at 1:00 in the morning on these mats while everyone's crying, I'd be a freaking millionaire. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that's why I do the gym. The jiu-jitsu is the vehicle that allows me to help people. I had an interesting life path before this, and I truly believe that the reason why I'm still here is to help people, right? I'm definitely not going to be a preacher, and I'm definitely not going to be a therapist. So I do my version of therapy through this avenue.
And you preach the gospel of jiu-jitsu. So you're kind of doing both things that you don't want to do.
Right. Kind of doing both things, but it's, I can justify it as this is what helped me, and maybe if I was like deep into religion, I was like, wow, this really helped me. I'm going to be a preacher because I'm going to be able to help everyone how it helped me. So it's, as much as I'm doing this for you guys, nothing makes me feel better than helping one of my students. I go home and I'm like, I can't sleep. I'm on fire. I'm like so pumped up because I was able to make a difference, and whether that was because that's what I needed and I didn't have that. And I'm like, listen, I can do this for somebody else. When I started the gym, I always thought if I could save one, it was worth it. I ran the gym. I started training Mickey and Mike in, I think, 2009, somewhere around 2009, 2010. And I didn't take a paycheck from the gym until the end of 2017.
Oh, wow. It just all kept getting funneled back in.
Yeah. I never, a buddy of mine called my jiu-jitsu pure. He goes, your jiu-jitsu is pure because you don't do it for money. Because at the time I wasn't, everything just went in the gym. As long as the gym could stay open, that's, and we were just teaching and having fun, and I was working a job. So I didn't need money from the gym. I had a day job. And then, at a certain point I was like, well, I really should do this full time because I could potentially serve more people better, and I can focus just on the jiu-jitsu and do a better job doing that. And, and so that's eventually what happened is then now I just get to focus on jiu-jitsu. That also afforded me the opportunity to hang out with my kids, and do that stuff. So even though I'm away from my kids, at work, which most people are away from their kids at work, I get to be away, but still, watch them and take them to school and go do all that stuff that normal parents don't get to do.
Yeah. Well, I was wanted to ask you, so I know you get to see your kids in the morning when you take them to school and this and that, but they're at school all day, and then your job's at night because we all your students work day jobs for the most part, and then we come in the evening and we do our thing. But that's the time you could be spending with your kids, which I want to say thank you because we're very appreciative of you giving up your family time to teach us degenerates jiu-jitsu. So thank you from all of us, and I'm gonna speak for everybody because if they don't say thank you, I'm gonna slap them. But how do you bounce that? Because you coach 5 to 6 days a week. You're lucky if you get a night off to spend with your wife and then spend with your kids. So that's besides all your students, you have 3 people in your household that is vying for your attention too, and vice versa. You want theirs, you want ours, yada yada. But how do you find that balance? Is Sunday like a family day?
Sunday's family day, unless for some reason I'm traveling or there's a competition or something like that. But Sunday is always family day. I've learned over the years that it's about quality time, not necessarily quantity time. Like for example, the normal lifestyle. People go to work, let's call it a 9 to 5, which realistically is more like an 8 to 5, or really like an 8 to 7 when you include an hour worth of travel time, right? So maybe you see your kids in the morning for a couple minutes, kiss them on the head, feed them breakfast, boom, you're out the door. You see them at dinner time, right? And then all of a sudden your boss is emailing you, or you're on Facebook, or you're whatever. Well, how much time are you really spending with your kids before bedtime? So maybe you're only getting them for about a half hour before bedtime. I still see my kids the same amount of time, but it's about quality time. It's about, when I'm with them, it's about them, Social media, technically, although I hate social media, it drives me crazy, and I would never have Facebook or any of this stuff if I didn't have the gym. And I didn't. The guys are like, listen, coach, you got to kind of start a Facebook page for the gym. There's only a handful of us training. We want some more. We want some more bodies. I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
So I started all that stuff because of the gym, and so that's kind of part of my job. So when I'm with them, I'm not spending the time on that. I'm spending the time with them and focusing on doing that stuff. And I'm a huge believer of let's get outside, let's go, get dirty and
make
go
memories,
run. Yeah, let's go make memories because, they're not going to, if I'm sitting on the couch just putzing around on my phone when I could be playing with them, I'm doing them a disservice as well. And it's finding that balance of trying to serve, be of service to everybody. And it's a balancing act, and probably out of everybody, my wife takes the brunt of it,
Right.
So
she's working long hours too.
She works a normal job, but she probably sees me the least out of anybody because she's not like me. She needs sleep, If she was like me and didn't sleep, then we'd spend 8 hours a day all night. We just never would sleep, but she needs sleep. And so the wife probably sees me the least amount, but she's willing to, this is a conversations that we've had, her and I, and said, listen, this is going to be our lifestyle. And she's like, okay. And, you make those sacrifices so that we can have this lifestyle. So she's willing to, maybe see me a little bit less and realize that she has to share me with the team and maybe isn't necessarily happy about that, but she's willing to do that for the greater good,
That's awesome. And thank you to your wife. And what are you going to do when your daughters get up into the high school age? Because that's, like if they're playing sports and whatnot, a lot of those happen in the evenings, the time jiu-jitsu is running. Like, have you already started trying to plan out, hey, this is how I want to maybe make some of their games or, whatever it is they're doing? Like,
fortunately with the sports that they play, they usually, at least now, they're competing on the weekends. So I can be like, okay, hey guys, I need somebody to cover Saturday class so I can go to gymnastics meet. So for right now, we're dealing with it the best way we can. So I'm able to meet, all those things. And, maybe I'll miss one, or maybe I'll have to leave partway through. So I'll only be able to see a couple of her events, and then I got to dip out and go run, or, whatever the case is. But the girls also know that, like, for example, if I'm going to go to one of Matt's fights, they look at Matt like a big brother or like an uncle. So they're like, okay, it's like part of the family. So they're like, Daddy's only going to be able to come to see one of my routines because he's got to go coach Matt. There was a scenario that happened with Matt's Glory fight where I had to go from the city, help corner him, immediately get in my truck, like right after he knocked the dude out. I high-fived him, gave him a hug, said, great job, buddy. I got to get the fuck out of here. And I hauled ass out of the city to go to the daddy-daughter dance so that I could kill two birds with one stone. And I was a little bit late to the daddy-daughter dance, but when I told those little girls that Matt knocked that dude out and showed them the video, they didn't give a shit. They were screaming at the daddy-daughter dance about Matt knocking the guy out, and then we went and did it, the whatever we did.
Wow, talk about two different worlds right there.
So it's a lifestyle thing, and the girls, this is also all that they know.
That's true.
It's been that way their whole life, so they don't know any life any differently. So it's not like they have any perspective to go, oh, this sucks. This is all they know.
Yeah, they don't see anybody else's life of like, oh, your dad just works Monday through Friday and is always there on Saturday.
Oh, no, they see that. They see that too. Okay. But then they also look at how those people interact with their kids. And they see like, they see people that are busting their ass for a freaking, Lamborghini or a Ferrari. And they go, well, that's not important. Right?
Yeah.
Because that dude's gonna kill themselves to make that $300,000 car because that makes them happy, or they think that makes them happy, right? But that's not important to me. So so they see that, and those people also aren't happy. I go pick my kids up every day from school, and I just people watch, and I survey the land, and I just shake my head like, damn, like I feel bad for all these people because they're chasing after the Joneses. And they're check out my new Mercedes and look at my new watch and all that, and like if that works for them, good on them. But I can also see that they're really not happy in their fit. Like I can look into their soul and be like, you are not happy, even though you put that big ass diamond ring on your finger.
Yeah,
you're not happy.
You're going to a job you don't want to be at, or living a lifestyle that you're like, man, you know what? I kind of just want to watch this football game on Sunday, but yet I have to go to work because I want that fancy car. I want this nice house. I want to give my wife, kids, whatever, this. And by the end of it, that's redlining. Like you're just constantly redlining,
and you're going to break.
Yeah.
The reason why
I'm trying to avoid all that in my life.
The reason why I'm never going to break is because although I'm redlining, I'm not redlining. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like if you think you can only do 8 push-ups, but you can really do 10. Most people stop at 8, and those are those people. You're like, no, I'm redlining at 8, but I could still do 10, 20, or whatever.
Yeah, we can always do more, right? You can always do more. You always got one more rep in you. You got one more round. There's always more that we can do.
I think that mindset comes from jiu-jitsu, if you ask me, right? So like if somebody has your back, you're not out of the fight yet. You just got to get out.
You're
not
out until you're unconscious.
Right. But think about it. Like in life, most people, once they have that person on their back,
they quit.
It's over. Like they're like, oh, I'm being physically manhandled, whatever, by this person that I'm quitting. I'm going to tap now. And you see that and you're like, why do that? But then when you have enough, experience in jiu-jitsu, it's like, all right, I got this gorilla on my back. Okay, now I'm going to have to fight, like heck to get it off. And I think that's, one of the positives that jiu-jitsu has given me is, hey, dude, you got to get this gorilla off your back because
you ain't dead.
Yeah, you're not dead yet. And that's my whole thing is like, you're not dead until you're not breathing. And,
yeah, you're not dead until you're dead.
And there's a lot of people that they're dead while they're still breathing.
When I roll with a lot of the newer guys, and there's a reason why I'll roll with the newer guys to keep them safe, and I'll feel them. I won't see them. I'll feel them start quitting. And that's when I start talking to them. Like, no, you ain't done yet.
I know. Yeah, you've done that a lot to me. So like,
don't tap out yet. There's nothing here. I'm just holding you. There ain't no submissions. You're not even in anything. Just relax, breathe, calm, chill, cool. All right, you got out the woods with that one. All right, I'm gonna take you back into the woods, and then you take them out of the woods and you take them back in the woods. You know what I mean?
And I want to say that to all the new people, especially at the gym here, with you, Josh, is, hey, look around at all the higher belts and the people that just have been doing it years. It doesn't matter what the ranking is. We've all been there. We've all been manhandled. You've when you started, you can tell them like, hey, there was people that have had years on me that I was in the same position. I was
still that way.
I was drowning until I wasn't.
Yeah, if I go roll with Jean-Jacques, it's going to be that way. Like that never changes. There's always going to be that. There's always going to be somebody better than you at everything you do. And I learned that from wrestling. I was a good wrestler. Wasn't great, wasn't amazing, but I said it out like, I may lose, but I'm never going to get manhandled, and it's a mindset thing, but I really believe like I'm not dead until I'm dead. I've had all the amazing stuff and all that stuff. And then I've lost it all. So I've seen both polar opposites of it. And I've realized, okay, you're not dead until you're not, until you're dead. So you can just keep on going until you can't anymore.
Do you think you would have ever learned that lesson without jiu-jitsu or martial arts in general?
I learned that lesson in life a bunch of times, before and it's hard to say because I never considered wrestling a martial art until later on.
I don't think anybody has.
Yeah, because wrestling's a sport, and they just, it's like an activity. So I never looked at it as a martial art, and it was never packaged that way until I got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I was like, oh, wrestling's a martial art. It really, really is. And, structure, it's very similar to Jiu-Jitsu. But people also that haven't, dived deep enough into wrestling, they think wrestling is a double leg takedown when a guy throws a punch in a cage. That's a component of wrestling, but there is a whole nother world that's involved. That maybe you see two facets of wrestling in MMA. But there's a whole other world of what's going on there that nobody else sees, and I think that's why for me, like, and Nathan Orchard and I talk about this all the time. Shout out to Natty O, one of the system's most gangster dudes and an amazing martial artist.
I was gonna say, I told you the story that him and Gio are like watching videos of them were my biggest like inspiration. This is before I knew you of like getting into jiu-jitsu and joining the 10th Planet System. So when I met Nathan, and everybody can go to my Instagram or whatever and find the picture with him, and I told him that story right before we took that picture. And I don't know, we had a moment there, and it felt special because I told him I just wanted to say thank you to him for being that person that got me interested and ballsy enough to go check out this gym and led me to you. Yeah,
the fusion that Nathan and I believe in the fusion of wrestling and modern Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is I think what the future is. And I don't think I have no problems with everybody teaching whatever they teach. I think it's fantastic, and it all works at the right time. And I shouldn't say there are no bad techniques, because there's some stuff out there where you're like, listen, that's dog shit. You probably shouldn't do that. But most techniques are applicable. There's going to be an answer to them, of course, right? There's no magic move, because that would make jiu-jitsu really boring. If there was like, okay, I only need to get to this one position and then nobody can do anything and then they tap, then everybody would be fighting just to get to that one position, and it would get old real fast.
I like to call that, like, if everybody can remember, if they're old enough, playing Nintendo 64 GoldenEye, and you get the golden gun. It's that one shot.
That's like God mode. Yeah.
So that's like that. I feel like everybody wants that answer.
Yeah.
Like, what is the golden gun? Like, what's the one shot kill here?
How many times did you play that till you're like, all right, this really isn't fun anymore?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was a kid, so my attention span probably didn't last very long. It was probably like a week, and we're all like, all right, no using golden guns here. You have to use the other weapons where you have to shoot each other 500 times before your guy's out of the game.
Right. And that's where, like, you know, I used to play online video games back in the day.
Back in Xbox original.
Yeah. Well, probably after that. But they would have things where guys are like, all right, you can only play with pistols, or okay, you can only play with shotguns, or oh, hey, guess what? We're only using knives right now, boys. You know, like now you gotta expand your skill set and change it up because we need a challenge, you know, which is different. Needing a challenge is, I've been spending a lot of time focusing on this stuff, which I have free time while I'm like building stuff and working on the house and whatnot, which is circling back to kind of what I do, you know, during the day. Take the kids to school, try to get a workout in, drink way too much coffee for the average human, which is what I call life.
I'm on that boat. Yeah.
And then, you know, try to get a workout in depending on the day, depending on how my body feels, depending on, you know, nothing too crazy. Spend a lot of time with mobility because 30 years on the mats, I got, you know, shoulders that are banged up and knees that are banged up and a banged up neck from wrestling. But I do mobility work. I try to get some low volume, strongman type workouts. I still do a lot of construction type stuff when I'm working on the house. So I'm lifting, you know, 16, you know, like yesterday, I had to plant a bunch of 16-foot 4x6 posts in the backyard to make like a jungle gym. So I was, you know, digging holes and doing all this. So there's a lot of manual labor. So I do that because it's good for the soul, I think. And then, you know, I vary my workouts as well. You know, I'll ride my mountain bike. I'll, you know, do stuff like that, and then go grab the kids, and then, you know, come to the gym and then do my outside stuff. So I'm always doing something. You know, a buddy of mine, and I don't think he came up with it, but they talk about, there's a saying is stillness is death. Right. So there's been days where I'm just sitting on the couch, putzing around on my phone, and then I feel like crap because I got nothing done. And I just sat there. I was like, well, I just pissed away the day that I could have been doing something else. And then when I'm getting my hands dirty and I'm, whether it's working out or whether it's doing, you know, stuff in the you know, on the house or even stuff to the gym, like I feel good. I feel like I accomplished something. And so that's what I try to do. Right. I fulfill myself with that every day. So maybe that's why I don't have bad days, you know.
Yeah, no, and then I agree with that. Stillness is death. And I've been telling, you know, I try not to preach lifestyles and stuff except on my family, like my brother and my dad. I don't even talk to my brother that often, but I definitely do my dad. And he's somebody like, you know, he'll go work his butt off, you know, because he works like you know, he owns his own business, works for himself. He's his only employee. So he can kind of dictate his own schedule. But I tell him, because, you know, he's 60 something now. I can't remember. He's getting up there. But he'll have those days where like his knee, that he had knee surgery on stuff, bothers him, and he just sits in his chair all day. And I just tell him, I'm like, Dad, I'm like, you know, you can't be still. I was like, you have to move around. Like, you have to walk. You have to do this. And I try to tell him, like, I see a lot of older people, especially in Chicago, like they're 85 and they look like they're 50.
Sure.
And they just don't stop. And I always ask those people, I'm like, hey, like, give me your secrets to life. And most of the time they're generally the same. It's, you know, drink lots of water, don't stop moving, and watch what you eat and how much you eat. Mm-hmm. Like, it's literally those three things. And I've taken that concept, you know, with all the jiu-jitsu and all the life lessons that I've learned here. I'm like, okay, just applied those major three core things that aren't jiu-jitsu to my everyday life. So if I'm not at jiu-jitsu, like, hey, you just got to be doing something. Keep it moving. And every day, like, I just tell myself, at least if you're going to be lazy and sit around kind of thing, or recover, whatever, if you don't do anything, make sure you at least walk a mile. Make sure you at least do 100 push-ups. Make sure you ice your back. Make sure maybe you're stretching, yoga, whatever it is you're into. Like, just do something that you're at least having physical movement for 2 to 3 hours a day at minimum. Like, don't fall below that threshold, because that's the people that can't move when they get older. And that's what I'm telling my dad. I'm like, man, I'm so worried for you, because I'm afraid you're not gonna be able to move.
Yeah.
And I think that stillness is death. But I think we have an 11 o'clock class, but I have to ask you, I want to, like, people will be mad if we don't talk about the lineage right now. And I want you to just dive into that. When you started jiu-jitsu, did you start with a gi? Kind of explain that and what led you to 10th Planet for the listeners.
So, you know, I started wrestling basically my whole life, but, competitively when I was a little kid, and did some cool stuff and was able to train under some pretty amazing grapplers. And then I stopped wrestling. I was running a business for my father, so I didn't go to college. And none of these things I regret in life, because I wouldn't change anything because it led me down to the path of this, right? So every action, everything, I wouldn't change a single thing, because it all allowed me to have what I do here. So I started in like the dark days of the UFC. I was like, man, these guys aren't that good. No one's really doing that. Maybe I could do this. So, which is crazy, because once you get in the gym, you realize, holy shit, this is a different thing. But so I decided that I'm going to start fighting MMA. And that was when I kind of discovered jiu-jitsu. I trained a little bit before that, like with some jiu-jitsu not in the gi. I was training with a couple buddies. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this thing for real. Go start going to the MMA gym. And then as I did that, I dove deeper. I knew what jiu-jitsu was. When I started training, there wasn't really a place for kids to train jiu-jitsu. I was too young. So then I just focused on wrestling. But I knew jiu-jitsu from watching UFC 2. I watched that and I was like, okay, this is the thing. And I never stopped watching the UFC. Although I don't watch it as much now, but so that's how I found jiu-jitsu. So I knew who Eddie was from King of the Cage, and I knew who, Eddie working at the UFC, and Joe and all those guys. I knew.
Well, that's
all
my
that.
question. How did you end up with Eddie then? When you could have easily found a Gracie gym, because Hoist being the guy probably you saw it from, you're like, oh man, this is some dangerous stuff. How did you not go to a Gracie gym?
It was easy because I was fighting MMA, and when you're not allowed to wear a gi in an MMA fight, I was like, okay, well, maybe I don't need to spend as much time on that because I'm doing MMA. I'm not doing jiu-jitsu. I'm doing MMA. And I'm like, okay. So, and although, no gi is a portion of that, so that was how I started officially learning jiu-jitsu, was because there was, we weren't fighting in gis, right? And I had spent so much time street fighting and working security and all that, and I can tell you that even in the middle of the winter, the first thing that comes off in a street fight is your t-shirt. Why? Because they don't want people to grab you and hold you, with your clothing, so they can sucker punch you or whatever. So the first thing that comes off is the shirt and whatnot. So I'm not worried about choking people out with their jacket when I'm fighting people with. And the first thing that I did when I would fight on the street was take my shirt off. So like I've ragdolled people with shirts and done backyard judo throws that weren't real, but so I'm like, dude, I can't have my shirt on. And then I go back to, well, in MMA, you're basically fighting in your underwear. Let's be honest, so I'm like, true. You can't grab the clothes. It's against the rules. So I'm like, okay, well, I don't necessarily need to learn that component of it right now, because that's not my purpose. My purpose was MMA, and later on, then I used the funny joking reference of, I think gi jiu-jitsu is great. I've actually won gi tournaments, which doesn't make any sense because I don't train in the gi. But the jiu-jitsu principles and wrestling principles, turn that around. But I'm like, listen, if you're fighting a dude naked in the shower, how's that spider guard going to work for you? You know what I'm saying?
That's very true.
So it depends on what the purpose is for your jiu-jitsu, and there's people that would agree with me and there's people that would disagree with me, and that's cool. And that's why jiu-jitsu is so beautiful, is because there's a place for everything. Like, and people are like, oh, you're in competition with all these gyms. I'm not in competition with traditional Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I'm not. That's not what I do here.
Yeah, and the people listening are going to be like, well, why are you fighting a guy naked in a shower?
Listen, people...
You had to be really mad at fight somebody naked in a shower.
We both know that that one time I found myself fighting somebody naked. Sometimes you get ambushed outside of the shower and you lose your towel. What's important, protecting your face or keeping from showing the world. So, but to circle back, so when I had a falling out with my coach, and I had to take some time off and whatnot, and then I was already training 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu because a buddy of mine showed it to me, and I was like, oh, this stuff's really cool. And I found that I could keep myself safe in MMA sparring with lockdown and stuff like that. Like I was able, and with my infusion of wrestling, I was like, man, I can keep myself from not getting pounded in the face during these ground and pound rounds. I'm like, oh, this stuff is pretty cool. And then
so I want to ask, like, I want to interrupt you. And
Sure.
did you get Eddie's books first? Did you get DVD? Like, what happened? How did
the books and DVDs is how I found, like, I knew who Eddie was, but I didn't know that Eddie, was this jiu-jitsu guy. I knew Eddie from the UFC and from King of the Cage and all that stuff. So when, I'm in the store, a buddy of mine shows me 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. He's like, dude, you're going to love this style of jiu-jitsu. And then I saw it and I was like, oh, this stuff's pretty wild. So I couldn't do any of it because I sucked at jiu-jitsu. But I learned lockdown really fast, right? And that's where it all started, that half guard system, because you find yourself in half guard all the time in MMA. So I'm like, I'm there all the time, cool. So I focused on that. I didn't have the flexibility to do all the crazy shit, rubber guard and all that stuff. So I had none of that flexibility. So I started training with the books and DVDs. And eventually at some point, I believed so much in that jiu-jitsu that I was like, and there was no 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. There was plenty of jiu-jitsu in Chicago, but there was no 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. And so I'm like, I think there should be 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu in Chicago.
Especially being a major city and with the growth of it and all that.
Yeah. And there were some people that had tried and it didn't work out for them, and I still talk to a lot of those dudes, and, they're awesome and I love them, no fault to them. But then I started bugging Eddie, and Eddie told me I was crazy.
Explain that process, because you had to go travel to him, for the listeners. You've told me this before, and I just love this story. But you had to
I travel all over the country, or I shouldn't say all over the country. I travel all over the Midwest, going to seminars and whatnot, and getting my face out there. And I'm emailing Eddie, and he's not getting back to me. And then finally, I run into him at a seminar, and I'm like, he used to ask back in the day, because there was like 5 gyms or something like that, 6 gyms maybe. When we were going to these seminars, he would say, how far did everybody drive? Everybody would raise their, he's like, oh, who doesn't train at this school? And people would raise their hand. He's like, how far did you guys travel to come and see me? And he'd go through, and there'd be like 5, 6, maybe, 10 of us that had traveled. And he would go, oh, how far have you traveled? Where'd you come from? Blah, 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 blah. So I raised my hand, and I'm like, I drove 10 hours overnight to come and train with you. He's like, where are you from? I'm like, oh, I'm from Chicago. And he's like, oh yeah. He's like, I'd love to have a school in Chicago. I'm like, bro, I've been emailing you for months. Like, I'm going to make some shit happen. And he's like, oh, that's you. Cool. And then, then nothing.
Then he ghosted you.
Yeah. Then he ghosted me. And then, then we got to talking, and then it's building the relationship, and it took a long time, couple years. And then at a certain point, I kept, he told me I was crazy for wanting to start a school. I was a white belt at the time. I hadn't gotten my blue belt. I was unranked, although I had been training for a long time, and wrestling helped with that. So I just never went away. And Eddie told me I was nuts and that I probably wasn't going to succeed. But if I was crazy enough to try it, okay, we'll figure it out.
Here you are, and I hope Eddie's listening this deep into it, because I just want to say, Eddie, thank you for letting this guy use the name, because I would have never found this place. So this is my personal thank you to him. So going around to these seminars, and putting yourself out there, did you not get discouraged along that process? Because a lot of people would have given up.
Fuck those people.
No. And that's what I'm saying. You're not a quitter, and that's one thing I really appreciate. Because when you follow somebody, especially your head instructor, you want to believe in something. You want to believe in them. It's like a football team. You want to buy into your football coach. I don't know how the Browns are buying into Hugh Jackson, honestly. And I'm saying that because I know Eddie's a huge Browns fan. So if he's listening, that dude is soft. Josh is not soft, everybody.
Yeah. And Eddie told me that too. He's like, listen, he's like, if you're going to embark down this journey, you're going to get tested. There's going to be these black belts that don't like 10th Planet and don't like you. And they're going to come in there and they're going to try to make you look like a fool in front of your students. So you got to be ready for that. And I was like, bring it on. I have no problems taking an ass whooping. That's life. But, and I was always never like, oh, I'm this, I'm that. No, this is what I am, and this is what I have to offer, and this is what it is. But once Eddie said I was crazy, that lit enough fire underneath my ass to be like, listen, this is one thing I'm going to succeed at, and then I believed in myself when nobody believed in me, and then you basically do it for long enough until everybody believes in you. And now at this point, everybody's got my back, including the people that told me I was crazy for leaving the normal life. where I potentially had a good career, fast tracking through the medical field and then getting up into upper echelon worth of management in the hospital systems and all that stuff, which would have been the long play, but all those people understand it now and they get it. And so in my mind, I win.
Yeah. I mean, it's bold. And honestly, like I was thinking about the same thing. Like you being in Chicago, like there's this bigger market and you get guys like Matt and stuff who fight. Like, do you want to do that? Because like Eddie, has Tony Ferguson that he's out in camp with. Like, do you want that to become like part of your lifestyle too? As like maybe not necessarily a head coach, but like one of the main coaches that's having to go and corner people and fly around, the country, the world, whatever, and corner your guys. Like, is that like something as a coach, as an instructor, does that inspire you a little bit? Like, hey, mate, this is a possibility. This could happen. Like,
no, like
you just like doing
for
what
me,
you do.
like I'm not. I don't like a lot of noise in terms of I'd rather be that dude in the corner that they're like, hey, you see that guy? That guy's done this and this and this. And I'm just sitting there just not talking. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be, I'm not out there looking for accolades. I don't, my goal is like, if Matt makes it to the UFC, it's because Matt made it to the UFC. And if I had a part of that, through teaching, whatever, that's cool. But that's not like, my goal is to make sure to help Matt fulfill his goals. It's not for like my personal wishes to be cage side in the UFC. Like that'd be dope as shit, and I wouldn't turn it down. But like, if I don't have a personal relationship with that person, what am I doing there?
Right.
Like, like, yeah, if Matt makes it to the UFC, like it was awesome being cage side with Matt at Bellator, and that was a big step for both of us. And the reason why it was a big step for both of us,
I think it was a big step for our whole team that was there. Because I mean, I remember we were sitting in that section. Like I've never seen I played a lot of sports, been in a lot of sports. Maybe it's just me, but I've never been more happy cheering teammates on in any sport than I was Matt that night in Bellator. That was surreal to me.
My goal was to have my little piece of the puzzle to help Matt get there, and that's it. That was it. And even if Matt said, hey, because, like I defaulted to Matt's striking coach. We talked him back. I was like, all right, so if we're running our primarily a striking thing, I don't need to be in the cage. I could just sit on the side and I can bark stuff out for the cage. You need to go in there, and, do your striking stuff. Or I could have been like, well, I've been with Matt longer, I'm going to flex my chest and I'm going to be in the cage. Well, if he needs striking, striking info, although I'm a decent coach in striking, I'm going to default to the quote unquote expert of striking. I'm going to be like, get your ass in there and go tell him what he needs to do.
You yell at the combos.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm going to go in there and encourage him. And if it comes to the grappling part, so like it's a cool dynamic. So Robbie will, have the combos and whatnot, and I'll be the cheerleader. And then when it hits the ground or we're working on grappling stuff, and then Robbie sits back and becomes the cheerleader, and I start coaching, and then we switch, and that's a bit of humbleness from both of us to go, listen, I'm going to stay in my lane.
Yeah.
Although I could, run Matt through striking combos and all that stuff because I've done that for years, but I'm going to default to the expert because that's what they do.
Yeah. It's like you said, and honestly, that's how a good relationship works. Like, Robbie, you're saying like he just does what you do basically all day, coaching, right?
Yeah.
So he coaches stand-up where you coach the ground game. So it makes perfect sense. Like, hey, let the person who they have classes on this every day of the week, basically, teach their classes. And
they have a rapport with coaching, and Matt is used to hearing his voice in terms of yelling out combos and all that stuff. So it could, when you're in the cage, it's insane. And the goal is to make it as least confusing as possible, right? And, because there's so much emotion and all that stuff going on. So it's to try to take all that stuff away to make it as easy as possible for the fighter.
Yeah. Do we have an 11 o'clock wrestling class?
Maybe.
Because we'll it's 11 o'clock. And I know we locked
I haven't
doors.
heard anybody knock yet. So
okay, so we're good. We're going to keep it rolling then.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get better at doing segments in my podcast.
Wait, let's go back to the lineage thing.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm under Eddie directly. I'm one of the most of the Moonheads now these days, but as the system grows, that's probably going to change. So I'm directly belted under Eddie Bravo, who is
got blue, purple, brown, all underneath Eddie.
Yeah, I'm what they call homegrown, right? So all of my belting is directly through Eddie.
We have rash guards for that.
Yeah, we have the homegrown rash guard, which Jeremy Fields and I, who's one of our black belts. We always talk about that being homegrown. So, I definitely take pride in that. Not that there's anything wrong with the guys that came into the system with other belting. If they're down for the system, I'm down for them.
It's one of those things.
Yeah.
If you love jiu-jitsu, we love you.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I'm what they call a homegrown. So all of my belts are going to come through Eddie. One day I'll get my black belt. Whenever that happens, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah. You're one of those people that, like, you see people like, oh, I don't care. And you're like, yeah, like when you say it, like, I'm like, oh yeah, you love this. Like, it's like, if you could burn the house down as long as your family's still there. That's what I think about with you with belts. Like, you could burn the gym down, but as long as you could do jiu-jitsu in the parking lot with everybody, you're still doing jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, we got a dumpster, we got some mats in there. Let's do some jiu-jitsu. Yeah. It, for me, like, once early on, I was like, well, people have successful schools in jiu-jitsu have black belts, so I need to get my black belt. So it was a rush to get a black belt for the school, not for much for me.
For more marketing and all that
stuff.
Aspects,
and then I realized, well, I have to focus on what my perception of success is. So, and then I thought, okay, well, no one's ever gonna come to the gym. And then all of a sudden, like, I got 20 students and I'm a freaking blue belt. And I'm like, oh, okay, so maybe I'm onto something, right? And then I got 30 students, I'm a purple belt. And, now I'll have, 50 to 80 students, as a brown belt. I don't know if I'm going to have 100 students when I'm a black belt. I don't know. Like, for me, I don't think that's a direct correlation between my success as with a program as whether or not I have my black belt. I once upon a time I did, but I'm going into my 5th year as a brown belt, and it's not like people aren't like, well, I'm not going to come and train with you because you're not a black belt.
Yeah. See, that when I came here, people were like, well, are you worried that Josh isn't a black belt? And I was like, hey man, and this is like, I'm dating back before I, started jiu-jitsu with you. I'm like, man, I was like, I've done jiu-jitsu like twice. I was like, this guy obviously is clearly better than me. I'm going to learn something kind of thing. And then I get in here and then it's like that. That's what I'm telling you. It's like it's not like you're teaching, magic tricks in here. It's like you're teaching legit jiu-jitsu. And I've gone to a lot of places and have trained with black belts. And I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, oh, Josh, not only does he hang with these people, like, he could teach them something. I'm sure as they could teach him something. Like,
sure. It's
not like you have nothing to offer high level guys. You clearly do, because I feel like I've been doing this for over 2 years now, and I feel qualified to say that at least a little bit. But have you ever seen the movie Field of Dreams?
Oh, it's been so long.
You know the saying, like,
well, to build it, you build it, they'll come.
They will come
for sure, 100%.
So I want to say that honestly, like, I think if you were a black belt, per se, like, I don't. And I never knew that about you. It's kind of like one of those things. Like, I can never picture you ever being bad at jiu-jitsu, because all I've ever known you as being so good at jiu-jitsu.
Well, thank you. I don't think I'm that good at jiu-jitsu.
No, but I want to point out, like, you.
But that's all relative.
You've inspired me for this podcast, because I look at you and I'm thinking, like, don't let labels determine what you are. Like, if you're committed, if you build it, they will come. And so, like, you've done that with the school, and I'm sitting here thinking, like, because me, I'm starting a podcast, and I have like these classes and stuff I go to college for, about to finish up. But and in my mind, I'm like, who am I? How am I qualified? Or, like, who thinks that this is worth their time? And, yet all it takes is a little effort of putting out and doing the things you enjoy and the things you're passionate about, which you're doing with jiu-jitsu. I'm doing with the podcast, and every time I've reached out to somebody, nobody's just turned me down and been like, nah, dude, you're not a big name person. I'm not going to, come be on your podcast. No, it's, if you build it, they will come. But people also can sense in you if you believe in it or not. Like, they know if this is BS or if it's worth their time.
Right. If you're doing it for the right reasons.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, so your jiu-jitsu is that, it's like, it's that saying, like, if this place burned down, we're still doing it in the parking lot because you're that passionate about it. So there's no BS to it. It's not a marketing ploy to make money and things like that. And that's what's so beautiful about, like, being in those atmospheres is it's real. There's nothing fake about it, because we've all been in situations in our life. Like, I've been in classrooms where I'm like, this teacher's here for the paycheck.
Oh, yeah.
Thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I've been in jiu-jitsu classes and been like, yo, this dude's phoning it in, and I understand we have good days and bad days, because I have good days and bad days as well. But, like, I love teaching jiu-jitsu, and that's why I come here every day. And that's why I'm fired up to teach jiu-jitsu every day, and there's times where I'll come into class and there's 2 people, and I'm like, I remember these days. All right, these guys are getting a private lesson. Yeah. And that's going to be the best class that they've ever had, because I'm going to be like, all right, guys, we were going to do this, or do you want to do this?
I've had a handful of those days with you.
Yeah, for sure. And then I'm like, all right. Weeks ago. Yeah, I'm like, all right, boom, we're going to just blast this out, and you're getting a free, it's not free, but whatever, a free private lesson, and, and I'm cool with that.
If you're getting a private lesson for your monthly fee, that's a free lesson.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the special.
Yeah, you're
thing
getting a 2-hour class where you can just pick my brain and whatever. Like, okay, well, I'm getting stuck in this. Cool, let's work on that. You know, because nobody else showed up, and shame on them for not showing up. You know,
Right.
It's not like we don't have plenty of students. You know, but sometimes those happens, or sometimes if it's 4 dudes, I'm like, all right, guys.
Well, we also live in Chicago where a lot, you know, we'll get a bunch of snow, and
Sure.
my southern friends and family that listen to this show, they understand like ½ inch of snow shuts their highways down. Here it's not so much, but we all know we get in those weak mindsets. We're like, you know, I could go to the gym, or I could sit at home and eat Cheetos.
Yeah, I just, you know, I've never had a day where I went to the gym and been like, man, I regret coming to the gym.
You know, I've thought about that. I've never regretted coming to the gym, but I've had a few days where I regretted my attitude.
That makes sense.
Gym, you know what I mean? Like, and then after a while, like, and you sit there and you know, and you get home, you get comfortable again. You're just like, you're upset. You're like, oh, it wasn't, you know, and then you start thinking like, well, no, it wasn't the gym. It was my attitude and my perception of like how I approach that and how I'm walking away with it. And then once I start to change my mindset, I'm like, you know, I did learn that cool little trick or something that maybe, you know, made that sweep a little easier or something like that. But back to the lineage. So getting to the Jean-Jacques part of it.
So 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu wouldn't exist without Jean-Jacques Machado. So, you know, Jean-Jacques, you know, not forced Eddie, but Jean-Jacques encouraged Eddie to, you know, do his brand of jiu-jitsu. And, you know, of course, he's a 3rd degree black belt under Jean-Jacques. And so, yeah, Jean-Jacques just encouraged him and said, yes, do that cool stuff that you know, you're being innovative and do it. And he did. You know, and so we have every bit as much to thank for Eddie. You know, we thank Jean-Jacques as well because, and I'm fortunate enough to when I go visit Eddie in California, I also get to go visit Jean-Jacques. It's like learning from the source. It's like, you know, at first, you know, I never trained with Jean-Jacques, but I would watch him do some stuff and I'm like, okay, that kind of looks like what Eddie does. Okay. And then the more I spend time with Jean-Jacques, the more I watch and I'm like, oh, everything that we're doing in terms of structural movement, basic fundamental principle, movement-based principle stuff is from Jean-Jacques. You know, all the crazy stuff afterwards is different. You know, that, you know, but all that other stuff, all the principles, all the basics and foundations is from Jean-Jacques Machado. So everything comes from Jean-Jacques. So, and Jean-Jacques refers to himself as like the grandfather of the system, you know?
Yeah.
Which is cool. He's like, Eddie's the dad. We're the kids, and Jean-Jacques is the grandfather. So
yeah, I say, and I was actually thinking about that because you have Jean-Jacques' photo and belt up on the wall, and then Eddie's next to him, and then yours. And then I started thinking, I'm like, okay, you know, us, you know, next waves that are coming through, we, you know, and I started thinking after a while, I was like, oh, this is turning into a family tree where, you know, like your ancestors, like after a while, it's like going to get a little fuzzy and you're not going to know who's who. But I was like, but what's so cool and so unique about how this sport is growing, how MMA is growing and things like that is it's so fresh. You basically can see the Adam and Eve kind of thing of like how this is all started.
Yeah. The cool thing with our system is we have a super close direct lineage to the upper echelons of jiu-jitsu. You know, not that there's anything wrong with, you know, but there's a lot of schools where there'll be, you know, 4 or 5 black belts deep before you get to the upper echelons of jiu-jitsu. We're very fortunate that, you know, all my students, and then it's me, and then it's Eddie, and then it's Jean-Jacques Machado, then it's Hicks and Gracie, and then at that point, you know, Hickson's now a red belt, but, you know, then you're into the beginnings of jiu-jitsu. So we're like 5-6 steps away from the actual source of where all this stuff came from, you know, which is super cool these days because jiu-jitsu is massive in comparison, you know, like, and Eddie has, believe it or not, has 100 schools now. And when I started, I think I was the 15th affiliate, I think. And of that 15, I think there's maybe 10 of those original 15 that are still left. You know, so guys come and go, stuff falls apart, you know, people move away, life changes, you know, whatever it is. But I think, I think that's where we're at. So, but I think I was the 15th affiliate, and there's 100 now.
Man, like, I mean, just picturing that because, you know, I follow all the 10th Planet stuff and I see, you know, the guys overseas, what they post and what we post. And of course, you know, California, the mecca of jiu-jitsu for us at least, if not the world, and watching what those guys post. And I just think that it's so cool that we're all doing something that is pretty close to the exact same thing, but it's like we've been talking about this whole episode. it's still slightly different, like to the Passini Grappling, to what Boogie and Gio are doing, to what Nathan's doing up in now at Seattle. Shout out Seattle. If anybody in the Seattle area is listening, there is now, I think in October.
Yeah, October 1st.
October 1st. So this is coming out on, in a couple of days on Monday. So like a week or 10 days away, like it's going to be going. So let's hit the pause button. Somebody's here. Let's let them in, and then we'll wrap this thing up when we get back.
Cool.
So we'll be right back. And we're back.
My butt's numb.
That segment is brought to you by Head Kick Radio. I keep making all these jokes about I need I don't know. I need to seek out sponsors or something for it. But let's jump into a segment that I started with Justin back when Conor McGregor threw the dolly through the window.
Oh, geez, yeah.
And so usually for whatever UFC card's coming up, there is one today actually, but it's the one in Russia, and I'm not that worried about it. I want to play a game called Who Throws the Dolly, but in the context of dolly. And we have to take Matt out of this and John.
Sure.
Because they're definitely the two people here, my first two picks of.
Neither one of them would ever throw the dolly.
Are you sure? Because I'm going to say in this gym alone, out of all your guys, which one's crazy enough to throw a dolly through a bus window after somebody?
Greg.
You stole my pick. You stole my pick.
Yeah, for sure. Greg, yeah. I don't know, man. We're so wild here.
We have so many different personalities. There's a lot of people that throw the dolly.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that absolutely throw the dolly, myself included. So yeah, that's tough. It's a tough one. But Greg will throw the dolly.
Greg's your pick. Yeah. Greg was definitely my pick outside of like. See, I don't even know. I said John, but I don't think John would throw the dolly.
John definitely wouldn't, and nor would Matt, because although they're both tough dudes and have no problem scrapping and all that stuff, and Matt's a professional MMA fighter, the last thing that they want to deal with is confrontation.
Yeah.
They hate it. They don't even like talking to me, so I have to like suck them into just a normal conversation because they think it's going to be a confrontation because apparently I'm a relatively confrontational person.
Yeah, so now that I have to throw my pick, like quick change here, I'm going to have to go with my boy, Joey Z. Yeah, I think Joey Z, like he's the sweetest guy, but 100%. When he loses his shit.
Yeah, those are both great picks because they're both throwing. 100% they're going to throw that dolly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild. What do you think? Let's talk about that really quickly. Like, do you like Conor's chances versus Khabib with that mauling pressure? It's
interesting. It's an interesting matchup because chaos can ensue. And everybody, there's always a puncher's chance. I don't think Conor's grappling ability is anywhere near what Khabib's is, and until you feel that upper echelon wrestling, grappling, you don't have any perspective to what that feels like. With that being said, he could still clip him on the chin. So that's why it's an exciting fight because, and I could be, anything could happen. Conor could throw up a pop triangle and catch him.
You think Dylan Dennis taught him some stuff?
Yeah, there's definitely opportunity there, but the way Conor plays his grappling, I really love. He smashes you up against the cage, which is old school. There's nothing crazy there. He keeps himself safe, like no open mat takedowns. He runs dudes down, gets him up against the cage, takes him down, and then plays basically topside wrestlers, like a wrestling top position, and he gets the far arm pinned against the cage with a one-on-one control, which is wrestling, and then just brutalizes them, which is something that, in the Midwest we've been doing forever. But, and Ben Askren does the same thing. And dealing with that is really, really tough. So I think that's probably Khabib's best option, but he could get clipped.
That's true.
Yeah.
By one of the best strikers, probably in MMA for sure.
Yeah. Conor's traditional martial arts training and movement patterns make it really tough to deal with. So it's interesting, but that's what makes it so fun. So,
all right, one last deep thoughted question here. Mm-hmm. What is the most gratifying thing as a head coach for you?
That's tough. It's so multifaceted because there's, like everybody does jiu-jitsu for a different reason, My guys, when they, I always want to say, oh, it's winning and all that, but it's not necessarily about that. It's about fulfilling whatever that goal is that they have. If it's winning at a competition because they put the work in, like that's their goal. If it's, Matt making it to the big show, Bellator, winning a champion, whatever it is, helping facilitate my students to hit whatever that goal is on like the sport side of it. The life side of it is helping them through all those issues that, because people maybe they don't feel comfortable talking to anybody else, but they're going to feel comfortable talking to me. So I let them talk and I help them out. And in the beginning, it was a lot of, here's my life experience, check this out. Now I'm going to sit back, I'm going to listen, and I'm going to go, okay, hey, maybe try this. Maybe this will work. Because there's no magic answer.
Yeah, it's like jiu-jitsu. There's a lot of trial and error. And there's some times where I'm like, hey, this worked, and this worked for me. I say that a lot. This works for me. Maybe try this, see about this, maybe tweak the perspective. My biggest change in everything, jiu-jitsu, life, everything was, making sure I'm 100% with myself, in terms of I'm in control of myself. Because if I'm in control of myself, I can control you. If I'm in control of myself, I'm not going to lash out on, wife, kids, whatever. The big piece is always just staying in control. And then, Jean-Jacques calls it, you're either chasing or you're in control. So he's like, you're either chasing or control. And that was super profound for me, because that's life too. I'm out of control. How many times you talk about in life, I'm out of control. Well, you just got to stay in control. Well, when you're out of control, you're chasing, Yeah. And you teach that to us, throughout all our jiu-jitsu lessons. Like, hey, don't be chasing, be in control.
Yep. And that's same thing in life, it's a tough scenario to answer, but yeah, helping people in their life. And when I get that message back, like, man, coach, I was in a really bad spot and I'm not anymore.
Right.
I'm like, that's a win. To me, that's probably more important than any, championship medals or belts or all that other stuff. Like, we got plenty of belts and medals on the wall.
Yeah, hanging up everywhere.
Yeah, whatever. That stuff's cool and all, and it's part of the story, and it's fun, and it's saying yeah, we're doing a good job here. That being said, if I could reach out and help all those people, that would be way more than any championship medal.
And I want to point out that was the biggest reason to me coming back. And I've done so dang well. I'm not getting into the full story, but I'm gonna give a glimpse of it. It's like when I came back, it because this place has always felt like home. It's been home to me. That, like you're talking about, I know a lot of these people's stories that that we're just loosely talking around, of like how who you've helped, and I'm one of those people that you helped. And then I and coming back and just like at first I was like, I need to show loyalty and this and that. But then I started thinking like even deeper, and I was like, it's not loyalty that I'm trying to show to everybody. It's the loyalty to myself, because I can go do jiu-jitsu and stuff, but for as long as I'm in Chicago, I want to do it here, for the sense that I take away so many life lessons outside of jiu-jitsu that when I went to a bigger school, like, that you just can't do that for everybody. It gets washed up. And I started thinking about like what you have here is so special, and I hope it forever stays that way. But I also want you, to make much money as you can. It's like you want your friends to be wealthy and healthy, kind of thing. You know what I mean? But then at the same time, like, I've seen it. It's so big, and when you get new people, like,
it's the reality of what success is. Do I need to be making $30,000 a month teaching jiu-jitsu? Sure, that'd be great. But then, what is my life like? Am I gonna, if I have 300 students, am I gonna be able to have a personal relationship like I have with almost every one of my students?
Yeah, and that's
at 300.
That's what I'm getting to. Yeah,
I don't think it's possible. I'm not even gonna know everybody's names. And at that point, like, if I don't know everybody's name and my wife doesn't know who everybody is, then something's off. And so like, I could do that with 100, probably 120 people. Do I need anything more than that? I don't need anything more than what I got right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, my ends are covered. I'm not broke by any means, and I'm not, starving. So what else do I really need?
I know.
I need to, teach, spread more. That's, as long as I can make my ends meet and keep the gym open, I'm here to, like you said, spread the gospel.
Yeah, to preach the gospel.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a preacher and I don't want
Yeah.
to be in the health, but yet, or, a psychiatrist, but yet you're doing both.
Yeah. Because I get every bit as much out of that as you guys do. So when like, oh, coach is being selfless. I'm not being selfless. I'm kind of being selfish because I get off on that. Not like,
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Like I live for that shit. When I'm like waiting for the next one and they're like, hey coach, we got to talk. I'm like, yes, we need to talk. Cool. When do we do it right now? And they're like, I'm not ready to, no, let's do it right now. Let's get this shit over with,
Yeah.
And people outside, that the ripple effect, the other people that we get to touch have also reached out to me and like, hey, I need to confide in something with you because it's going to give you some perspective. And I'm like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Cool. I'm glad you told me that. Now, how are you doing? And then,
right.
And then they're like, I wasn't really thinking about that. I'm like, well, cool. Let's talk about it because you obviously reached out for me for something else. Now let's also help you. Mm-hmm. So even though you're not directly correlated to me, you are because you touch somebody that I love. So now let's make sure that everything's cool because then their whole ecosystem is on point, which then just helps continue the whole giant ecosystem.
Right. Well, and that's the same thing I think with jiu-jitsu. It's like, how can I get better if I don't make you better kind of thing. And that's, you take that outside of jiu-jitsu and it's like, hey man, like if your life's not okay, then my life's not okay because I need you to be good so I can be good and we can be healthy, grow together, learn together, live together kind of thing. And I think that is super important. So I want you to plug the school here and then I want you to plug the 101 class and the beginners class.
Cool. Which is where I think most of the learning is done.
I learn more in there than I do the advanced.
Yeah. Advanced is, advanced where you're getting in there, putting in work, putting the hard work in, but the learning is done in beginners and jiu-jitsu 101. So yeah, we're 10th Planet Chicago. I think we're 10th Planet Chicago on Instagram. We are 10th Planet JJChicago.com is our website.
And store if you want merchandise.
Yeah. There's t-shirts and all that fun stuff up there.
We have some awesome t-shirts, everybody. Go check them out.
Yeah. Our rash guard game is on point for sure, but those aren't out there.
No, we have an unhealthy, all of us have an unhealthy obsession with rash guards. And you and Jake and whoever else is all creating these things, y'all have a great creative eye for it.
It's my crazy madness that's in my mind. Jake handles all the fight chick stuff and yoga chick stuff. I handle all the 10th Planet designs. Jake does the physical work for me because I'm not smart enough to use Photoshop and whatnot, but all the designs come from my brain and then we pump them out there. But yeah, check us out on, we're 10th Planet Chicago on Facebook, Instagram, and just stop by the school, check out, the Jiu-Jitsu 101 and the beginners class. Those are, like I said, that's where all the real learning is done. And it's not, Jiu-Jitsu 101 is like core fundamental stuff that you have to learn, or you're not going to be able to get to the advanced class or the beginners class because you're not going to understand the foundations of it. And then the beginners class, although I call it my beginners, I think it's, somewhere closer to, intermediate jiu-jitsu. But it's what I consider a beginner jiu-jitsu player. So, and we teach in paths, so it's not like if we get deep into the path, they won't be able to, maybe it'll go too far into the path if we're 8 moves deep, but we're going to start you, even if you can just get out of side control or whatever the scenario is that new people to jiu-jitsu can make it through that class, and then even people that have been doing jiu-jitsu for a long time are still going to get some value out of that as well.
Yeah, and I'm definitely somebody who gets a lot of value out of those classes. And if you've never been to jiu-jitsu before, you're listening, the hardest part is walking through those doors.
100%.
And, meeting all the different personalities that you're going to see in here, and you're going to be like, oh, that person maybe not like me. I'm going to tell you, like, nobody thinks like that. That's just all stuff you put in your own head. Get out of your own head. Get in the gym. We don't care if it's this gym. We don't care if it's, any gym. Get in a gym, learn jiu-jitsu. And Josh, I'm going to have you on many more times after this because I'm going to talk you into it. But I had to get the important episode out of the way of like, hey, let's talk personal, deep stuff. Because after this, I promise you, we're just going to have fun. We're going to talk whatever.
It's awesome.
Because we got a little morbid today. We talked about death for 20 minutes. Probably.
That wasn't morbid. That was celebrating life, sir. Celebrating life.
Hey, perspective.
Yeah.
Perspective.
Yeah.
That's why you never leave me in charge of saying things like that. But everybody, I have no idea what episode we're on. I think it's episode 19.
Something like that.
Josh, I need you to blast this out, my friend, because
I will. We're gonna
It's
get you
new.
some views on this bad boy.
I need a little help sometimes.
Of course. I'm listening. It's a good podcast. Everybody should listen to it.
Hey, I'm gonna cut that out and make a segment out of it.
You should.
Like a quick little thing. Just
How
blast
dare
that
they
out.
not listen? Got to take in more content. There's good stuff here. So
All right, everybody. We have got to get Josh into class and teaching some people some wrestling before Leg Lock Club starts.
Yep.
And definitely come learn leg locks at this gym because 10th Planet, no matter what belt you are, we're gonna teach you how to defend some legs and snatch some legs.
absolutely.
So everybody, we out.
Say goodbye to all my friends. Say hello to the stars above.